game now. Me and you, we ain't the same now. Lions coming out to play now. Opposition out the way now. Out of the way, you wasn't invited. Say you come to play, I dare you to try it. You don't wanna try me, then step up to my team. Yeah, out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way.
Just can't do that. Where your crew at? Y'all can't do that. Nah, where your crew at? Nah, man, cause now you alone. Yeah, get out of my zone. Man, cause now you alone. Love, get out of my zone. Nah, cause they don't want it with me. Love, you gotta ride with me. Love, cause y'all don't want it with me. If you start a fire with me, then you're never gonna stop me. Nah, cause they don't want it with me. Love, you gotta ride with me. Love, cause y'all don't want it with me. If you start a fire with me, then you're never gonna stop me.
Welcome to the place where dreams come true, where everything you want can be yours, if and only if you're willing to work for them, you're willing to hurt for them, but most of all, you're willing to be first for them. Ha! Look, I'm going straight to the top. I don't know how I would stop, like it or not. I got some goals that I'm hitting. You hear what I'm spitting? It's hot. Look what I got. Whole lot of passion and pain. The road to success is insane. Stay out my lane, cause I'm on a mission. I'm getting what stands in my way. Yeah, I'm a beast. I wouldn't play with me, baby. The way that I'm training is crazy, and I do it daily. You wanna talk about drive? I got more drive than Mercedes. I've never been lazy. I'm in the room, it's a red alert. You wanna compete? Well, get better first. I got 10 toes in the dirt, push through the hurt just to show them my worth. I'm the best. Yeah, I'm the best. I never stress. I know what's next. I'm who they test, like we playing chess. But I'm unimpressed, so now let me flex. Ha, yeah, I'm a work through the struggle and hurt, cause I know my worth, and I gotta be first. Ha, yeah, I gotta be first. Look, I don't want anyone's sympathy. I understand what it's meant for me. I give my focus and energy. If it's meant to be, then it's meant to be. But mentally, I'm undefeated. They hear that and say I'm conceited. Like there's no reason. Like I don't beat them and come back again just to teach them that when you work under pressure, you reach higher measures. They'll try and bring you down, but you cannot let them, and only get better and focus on cheddar. Eye on the prize and you'll become a legend. Like, when I'm in the room, it's a red alert. You wanna compete? Well, get better first. I got 10 toes in the dirt, push through the hurt just to show them my worth. I'm the best. Yeah, I'm the best. I never stress. I know what's next. I'm who they test, like we playing chess. But I'm unimpressed, so now let me flex. Ha, yeah, I'm a work through the struggle and hurt, cause I know my worth, and I gotta be first. Ha, yeah, I gotta be first. They don't know what's gotten into me, how'd I turn pain into energy. Through all the struggle and hurt, remember my worth, and that's why I gotta be first.
Won't stop going till a player on top know it. Rooftop, penthouse, suite. If you really want it, gotta own it. Fly through it, we was at the lowest. Blood, sweat, tears, the components. Riding all year, now's the moment. We are not friends, we are opponents. Yeah, I'm coming for mine. Yeah, I'm making a play, the game on the line. Yeah, I've been on the grind. Yeah, I jump in the spot, I made it my time. Yeah, look in the sky. Yeah, the stars align, no shade to shine. Can't stop it already, emotional, working devotion. We put in this time, look. You won't stop.
The Snapdragon Pro Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming and Monster Energy.
Good evening, everybody, and a welcome. We're back with the Snapdragon Pro Series and the Asphalt 9 Legends Finals. The Open Finals are here once more. I'm Jagermeister, with me is Lethal, and I cannot wait for the competition to get started. It's been months since we last spoke about this sort of stuff, and I'm really happy to be back here, Harry.
Yeah, nice to be joining you once again here, John. Yeah, it has been months. It's been way too long. Right. We're back together again for another season, another Open Finals here at the Snapdragon Pro Series. Again, both platforms stacked, so much to talk about, so many storylines, and yeah, excited to get into it.
So before we get started into any of that, we're talking about platforms. That's because we've got both iOS and Android in today's competition. Let's give you guys a little bit of an overview of the tournament structure and how we got here. So today we are going to be looking at the single elimination finals that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. In order to qualify for these single elimination finals, we had people from all over Europe and the Middle East try and compete to set the fastest time in a series of time trials. The 4 fastest racers on iOS and Android made it to today's single elimination bracket. We're going to be going through all of the iOS competition first, and then we're going to be moving on to the Android competition in the second half of this show. And while I appreciate a place on the podium is on the line and we're looking for our champion as well, it's not just that that's on the line. It's not just bragging rights. We've got some prize money on offer as well. So out of the 8 competitors that are going to be competing this evening, everyone will go away with at least $200. That's the good news. But really, everyone wants to be on the top step of that podium. $1,200 on offer for the drivers, the racers that are able to come out on top today. So it's going to be quite fun, Harry, and there's actually a reasonable amount on the line here.
There really is. $1,200 for third place. Not really too bad for a day's work, is it? Considering you had to compete against thousands and thousands of players trying to qualify here, and with only 4 spots remaining, or only 4 spots available to them in order to try and qualify here today, we really do have the best of the best. And I'm sure for anyone new to the scene or hardcore in a competitive scene, you would have recognised these names.
Yes, absolutely. We see some mostly actually names that we're quite familiar with and we've actually seen in this phase of the competition before as well. Let's show you guys a sneak peek of who these people are and what that looked like. So we're going to start off with iOS. Future Flash is there. We've also got RPM Alex and Stablemate Fra, in addition to Nilo rounding out this bracket of 4. What do you think of these players, huh?
Every single one of them, it does not surprise me they're here today. It's nice to see Fra back. We've not seen him in a couple of seasons now, so nice to see him make a return. We know he's a very strong player. I remember back at Milan Games Week where Alex was only just able to take down Fra 3-2, but of course that was many moons ago. Future Flash, also a champion in his own right a couple of times in the past. Had a little bit of a shaky start last season, but I'm sure he's going to try and regain his confidence back and try and at least do something here. And Nilo, everyone knows about Nilo as well. Had a couple of first and second places in the past as well. But in terms of the times, though, these are the times for each of those tracks. Future Flash does come in at number 1 seed because he did qualify in the first qualifier, and then that's why you got him from 1st to 4th seed. So whatever qualifier you competed in and you won, that is the seed you're going to get. So of course, Future Flash with the first qualifier, he won that, so he'll be coming in with the first seed, and rightly so. But for iOS, these are the names which kind of crop up to my head if I was thinking about the iOS platform, and to see these 4 names here does not surprise me at all in the slightest.
All right, well, speaking of Future Flash, we've actually got a little bit of a video to show you guys. We interviewed him a little earlier on just to hear what he had to say. So let's go ahead and pop you over there.
So, hello, I'm Leo, also known as Future Flash. I am the esports champion of the biggest tournament in Asphalt 9. I also, together with RPM Alex, we competed in the Asphalt 9 Team Edition, which we came 2nd place. And I'm also the champion of the recent tournament from Lamborghini Countach event. And other than that, I also participated in the Epic NFT challenge, which I made top 1, and I got basically the esport champion. And also in previous season, I got third place because of very bad luck, but this time I'm able to come back and, let's say, get revenge for my position. So yeah, I am very confident. Maybe some people will tell it's a bad thing, or he shouldn't be like this or whatever, but I feel confident on myself and I can feel like I can dominate with this car. Yeah, it's been great for me. You know, I'm very excited for the finals tomorrow, and yeah, let's see what happens, you know. Yes, there is. Actually, I'm playing against Nilo. He's also a player from RPM, and he's also just like me. He started the game in 2018. I would like to thank everyone for supporting me and believing in me in such a long way. People who have been following on my YouTube channel. If you want to find my channel, it's called the Future Flash Asphalt 9, and it will pop up immediately. And I make random live streams, and recently I will also post some TLE events. So yeah, thanks to everyone for believing in me, and I will try to show my best in this tournament, and let's see what happens. So.
Let's see what happens indeed. I mean, I think, honestly, a little bit of humility at the end there, maybe just keeping himself in check, but he sounded supremely confident in that interview.
Yeah, he's always been a very confident individual, which is why I was quite surprised about his third place last season. And, you know, he did say why he felt like he got third place, which is perfectly understandable. And that's why I was a little bit shocked, because he's normally winning these events, or at least making it to the finals no matter what. Kind of like the same boat as RPM Alex. I kind of see them two very close to each other, very neck and neck. So very excited to see what he can bring to the table this time around.
Well, the good news is, if we do indeed see a similar matchup to that, we've got best of threes at the moment, but it's going to be a best of 5 grand final. So regardless of who gets there, I really hope that goes the distance. Let's take a look at that bracket one more time. So we've got Future Flash taking on Nilo to begin with, and then we've got Fra and Alex competing for a spot in the final. So RPM, they're really guaranteeing themselves someone in the top 2 and someone third, fourth, and obviously they want to be able to finish first and third here. But right now, all eyes on Nilo versus Future Flash. What can you tell us about these races and their head-to-head?
I thought Nilo was an RPM. I wasn't really 100% sure, but I'm glad that Flash managed to confirm it in the interview anyway. But with Alex... Exactly. Well, this is the problem. Like, you know, this is the issue. And, you know, going into this first match now between Future Flash and Nilo, look how close the times are. I think on a map like Nevada, no matter what track it is, it's more about refining your lines and your corners rather than the consistency there. So I'm not really too surprised that the timings are this close. Okay. But it depends how good Nilo is in a 1v1 format. He's quite good, don't get me wrong, but I always feel like Future Flash does have the edge on the rest of the pack compared to most people, just due to the strategies he uses in order to try and escapade or try and run away with some of the circumstances. So a lot about your mentality and, of course, how to try and throw your opponent off in multiple ways, just be able to keep that consistency there. But like I said, with a map like Nevada, yeah, sure, it's more about corners and lines rather than about the consistency of getting those jumps, or, you know, the break nitro tricks, or, you know, some of the speed tricks you want to use to try and keep that high level of nitro going to extend your lead. But in this one, it's going to be very interesting to see how things go, because you can't really play too dirty on a track like this.
Can we talk about how Future Flash's hair volume is just on point, and we're both basically trying to cosplay his hair and failing miserably?
We're trying.
I mean, that is gravity defying preparation for that photo shoot. I'm impressed.
I need to ask him what he's using, because I'm obviously using... Either I'm getting old now and my hair won't stand up enough, or he's just using something I'm not using, but definitely got the best hair in Europe for sure.
So this, of course, was their time in the qualifier, but let's take a look at the tracks that they are going to be racing on today in this next semi-final. We're going to be starting off Streets of San Francisco. We're then moving on to Cliffhanger, and should a third track be required, we're going to be moving on to Starting Grid. So when we compare these tracks, Lethal, with how they actually arrived here on the time trial qualifiers, are we expecting a vastly different game?
we could be, especially in a 1v1 scenario. Normally I see a lot of these players, I wouldn't say they change up the game entirely, but of course, you know, comparing 1,000 tries to only have one opportunity to try and knuckle things down, it's a very tough, tall order in itself. But going through these tracks, I think San Francisco is pretty standard apart from some of the narrow parts of the tracks. Himalayas is going to be the one I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on, because I was talking about, you know, consistency with the jumps, and if you're falling from behind, you might have to barrel roll some of the straight jumps just to be a little bit more, you know, that high risk reward factor to see if you can close your opponent or extend the lead. Depends how risky you want to be here, John. And then lastly, but certainly no means least, Auckland for starting grid, if it does go to the third and final track. A lot of tough, I wouldn't say tricky, just a lot of tough corners you've got to try and refine once again to see if you could try and extend that lead. So we have to see how they do around some of these bends, and to see how they be able to use and consume their nitro, and see what times they save it for. And yeah, not as many risks as Himalayas, but Himalayas is definitely going to be a doozy, I can tell you about right now.
Well, which is excellent, because we are guaranteed, of course, to be racing Himalayas. The only track here that we might not see is Auckland, and that's only if one of these races makes it a 2-0. But obviously in the semi-finals, these top 4 players are incredibly talented, very, very quick. Ultimately, though, 1v1, fundamentally a different beast to time trials. You already touched on this a bit, Harry, where it's you have a lot of attempts versus just one attempt to get it right. But come on, this is the sharp end of the stick here. These guys are completely used to it. We're not going to see any mistakes, right? Or are we?
I think we might do at some stage. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, just due to the fact that with some of these players, they want to play as clean as possible. If your opponent or someone knows that there's that much of a skill gap in comparison, there's always that, you know, instance in their mind that they could play dirty at the start, or try and collapse on top of them over a ramp, or use that shockwave to maybe try and boost them off and cross the barrier or something like that. But I think all these 4 players are very clean drivers. They are very strong, and I don't think they're going to take those kind of risks on the first track. If they do, then, you know, Jesus Christ, like that, I'd be gobsmacked if we see something like that. But we'll see how things go. But I do feel like there isn't really a clear favourite on the entire iOS side. If I said anything, maybe Future Flash by the tiniest of margins. But this is what's so exciting. The iOS side has always been got some star-studded players across the board here, and this will be a true indicator of what things to come potentially for the final later.
I think I'm going to echo what you say. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a big favorite, but my prediction, based on what I've seen so far in the qualifying times, has to be Future Flash. We saw on the screen earlier that even when Nilo qualified, Future Flash was a 1/10 of a second behind. And Future Flash was technically posted a faster time than Alex even when Alex qualified. The only reason, of course, is that Future Flash had already qualified from the first qualifier. So it feels like he's almost doing this for sport, just to make sure that he can stay on top of everyone on every track. And for me, that's something that stands out in a way perhaps that his competitors haven't.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think in terms of predictions on this match in particular, even going by those qualifiers, it's very tough to go by qualifying times overall, even if it's by a 10th of a second. But it does say it's close, don't get me wrong. It doesn't, from what I've seen from the qualifying times on the other tracks as well, I wouldn't say many of these are like a track specialist in any way, shape or form. There may be like 1 or 2 they have the weaknesses. Probably they're praying to God that there isn't any of those tracks coming into fruition in this best of 3, or maybe in the best of 5 later on, we'll have to see. But I kind of feel like Future Flash will edge this, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it goes to a track 3.
Okay, yes. Oh, I'd love to see a track 3 in the first matchup of today. We'll have to wait and see whether that ends up materializing. We've got Future Flash versus Nilo to start us off. And then later on, of course, we have Alex and Fra duking it out as well. So I think it's fair to say that, Lethal, we both think Future Flash has an edge here, but it's not that big an edge. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable in itself. I think going into San Francisco as well, this will be a good indicator of what could be to come in this best of 3. So like I said, there's a wide variety of bits and pieces you can use on the other 2 maps, but for this one in particular, because it's quite standard in what you need to do, we'll have to see how this goes forward. But Nilo there will be on the right hand side with Future Flash on the left. Future Flash already with the lead and using that shockwave straight away, but you've got behind Nilo with that perfect nitro, just saving it just a little bit, using the double to go across this next jump, both using the 360 just to get across and to gain a little bit more as a shockwave across around this next bend.
Nilo looking to see if we can get a little bit of time back there. Future Flash just edging him out at the start of this engagement, but he's showing no signs of slowing down. Very happy to use the ramps, continue to make the most out of his nitro, doing just a little bit of risk there, constantly trying to make those maneuvers work, and he really wants to catch up. The good news is Future Flash isn't pulling away.
Yeah, Future Flash, that was quite a risky move going after that last jump to do the 360 there. But do you know what? It's given him a little bit of an edge, a few tenths of a second, both of them using that shockwave going under this next bridge. So a little bit of a straight line here. Nice wall ride from Flash as well, just to extend that double nitro just a tad. Save it now as he goes across this next jump. Good barrel roll, good line as well going into this second lap.
So as things stand, Future Flash just a couple of tenths in front. We know that Anilo isn't being dropped. He's waiting for a mistake, looking for an opportunity to come back ahead. But Future Flash at the moment just doesn't seem phased at all. I'm looking for the tiny mistakes. I'm looking for the extra risk that doesn't need to be taken. We saw a little bit of that on lap number 1 with the 360. But at the moment, it looks like Future Flash might have this in the bag.
It certainly has done, using shockwave up both those ramps. Good stuff there. Doesn't go for the 360 this time round. I completely understand that. He knows he's in a safe enough position by about a few tenths of a second just to hold on to this lead without doing any more in order to conserve that nitro or gaining more nitro in the meantime. Using that perfect nitro, just drifting round here so he can get that shockwave to go down this straight line underneath this next bridge. Nilo now, still consistent, still trying to use the best lines possible, roll riding off this bridge to get a little bit more for that double nitro, but still struggling to keep up with Future Flash here. Doesn't get as much airtime here, but it doesn't matter. Future Flash does manage to take it, does take the first track there in convincing fashion by half a second.
Yeah, taking fewer risks there on lap number 2. Completely understandable, of course. That extra 360 on lap 1 had the potential, I would say, to backfire just a little bit, but quite clearly it hasn't.
No, I do agree though. Like with the second barrel roll, when I saw the 360, I thought, oh, this is great. But at the same time, it's not the tightest of corners, but it can be quite risky. It can slow you down a little bit. But the man was after that nitro. He wanted to increase it by a few extra attempts. The reason why he wanted to do that is because he wanted to avoid getting bumped, crashed, any risks like that, which can be a bit of a pain in the backside. Because let's be real here, with Asphalt 9 especially, one crash, that's it, you're done, especially at this level of play, especially at this high tier, and it's extremely, extremely difficult.
I mean, what I would say is the last time we were casting Asphalt 9 together, we had, I think, 2 different matchups where both players crashed out at some point. So the nerves clearly do get to these players at the highest level of competition. But on this particular occasion, at least on track number 1, Future Flash there, looking like he is sitting pretty.
He certainly is indeed. And he should be, you know, pretty damn happy with a half a second lead. That's, for a lot of people, probably thinking, oh, that's not much. No, that's actually quite a lot, you know, considering there was not really too many mistakes. There was a couple of changes which you saw Future Flash use compared to what Nilo was doing with his conserving of the nitro and just trying to get a little bit more, I wouldn't say airtime, but just doing a few more tricks in order to try and at least pursue a little bit further. Because like I said, when you've got a player from behind, it's very easy to be trampled on or be turned around from behind or crash or anything like that. So he wants to avoid anything like that, like the play against. Like I said, both these players are so good, or all 4 of them on this platform are. They want to try and keep it as clean as physically possible, which they both did in all fairness.
Will there come a point, maybe a Future Flash is ahead on track number 2, where for a temporary boost to try and knock him off the track or do something else, we might see something less than squeaky clean from Nilo here?
If it's the final lap and there isn't much time left, that's probably when you're going to see something like that, because of course, you know, it's the only thing they can do to try and keep this themselves into the game. But it's going to be tough. I still think it's going to be, you know, clean and tidy. I think they're not going to rely on, you know, messing up each other in any way, shape or form. With Himalayas, it's like I said, it's a high risk, high reward kind of track with some of the stuff you can do. But if Nilo does find himself trailing behind again, he can barrel roll off these straight jumps, whilst Future Flash may go for the safe route and just casually go up there and do the 360 instead to get a little bit more nitro instead of going for the barrel roll. So there's a lot of bits here and there which Nilo can use now to try and overtake and get a bit more nitro. But the question is, 1, will he risk it? 2, will he be the one in the lead in comparison to Future Flash? We'll have to see when that time comes.
And because this is Himalayas as well, if you are in the lead, do you want to take those extra risks to make sure you extend that lead, knowing that the high risk, high reward is probably something someone like Future Flash would be like, you know what, let's take some of this and try and regain the lead and close this out in a 2-0. I feel like that's got to be putting a little bit of extra pressure on Nilo as well.
Yeah, it shows a lot of confidence as well from Future Flash. Like going to his first track straight away to doing stuff like that. It's quite risky in itself, but managed to survive anyway. As we're going to go into the second track, Speak of the Devil, Future Flash with the early lead, going straight on in. Nilo's just trading a little bit behind Drift, just off a tad, but using that shockwave now, going to a different part instead, which is quite interesting in itself. Using that double nitro to go across, going to barrel roll over with the shockwave to increase his time here. And it was looking like, I was thinking that he was going to try and go off that guardrail. Not really too sure what happened there, but Future Flash now just going to ride the wall just a tad so he can get that shockwave off this next jump. And then that goes Drift for the next shockwave. Oh, sorry, double nitro off the next barrel roll. Looking very good here from Future Flash.
Yeah, right here, Future Flash is in the lead, but only by a little bit. Some interesting differences in strategy here as Future Flash tries to cement some sort of advantage at the end of lap number 1. I think he's managed to claw a tiny bit of time back there as well. We're now on board with Nilo, not very far behind either, as you guys can see, doing some 360s there. Future Flash losing a bit of speed as a result, and Nilo's right on top of him.
Yeah, Future Flash decided to go for the 360 so he can get a shockwave over the next barrel roll, but it helped him a little bit. But the problem was the fact that Nilo was so close behind of it, he was able to not give him as much of a barrel roll. A little bit of a dip there, but in the end, Nilo's going to be able to come out on top in that little scuffle. Shockwave off the next barrel roll is going to be doing the exact same thing again, just to try and keep a lot of pressure onto both of these players here. Able to ride across down below, and now looking to use that double nitro to bull ride and then again use the shockwave off this next jump.
And right now, Nilo having that advantage. We saw Future Flash miss a jump earlier, allowing Nilo just to build up a little bit more shockwave very, very early on. I think he got to use it just a tad earlier, and that gave him a little bit of an advantage. Future Flash now trying all of the stops to come back, but it's looking like that gap's increasing, if anything.
Yeah, it looks like it is at the moment. Future Flash trying to do everything he can with the single or double nitro. Of course, you get more durability, but at least you get more turning capacity as well. This is going on forward, but it looks like Nilo crashed right at the very end. And that's going to cost him the entire series. The one time you didn't want to do that. And literally, Future Flash will take it 2-0. I was going to say we're going to a track 3, but clearly not.
I was completely ready for the decider. I was ready to introduce track 3. I was excited to talk about the different tracks we're now going to see. And then at the death, went in the lead as well. That's got to be heartbreaking for Nilo.
It certainly is. Yeah, I'm not too sure what happened there when he went up the last barrel roll. Like, of course, it was clear as day he was going to take that. I think it was going to be just inside the railing, but instead just messed up on the turning, which I'm a little bit surprised about because it's one of the easier barrel rolls to do, especially towards the end. So I'm not really too sure what happened, but commiserations to Nilo. That's probably one of the worst ways to go out. Okay, crashing at the start, you know where you stand. You can think about what to do in Auckland, but the fact that he done it for 2 seconds before the finish line, something like that. Rough, unbelievable, man. But that's such a shame. But Future Flash, though, we'll be seeing him in the final.
That's why you have to make sure you live in the moment and you stay with it. You keep that focus up. You don't really want to be thinking about, oh, what's happening in Auckland. I think that was a classic case of thinking ahead before the race was even over. And it's not often that that leads to a mistake because you tend to be high and dry at that point. But in this particular case, unfortunately, Nilo really paid for it. And that means the Future Flash is through with a 2-0.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to have to definitely watch the back and just see exactly what happened. Sadly, I don't think it was from his perspective. It might have been towards the end, but yeah, I'm definitely going to have to watch the back to see exactly what happened because it's, yeah, very uncharacteristic from him.
So here we go, a couple of replays of what happened there. Future Flash just ever so slightly inching ahead at the start. And then we had Nilo opting to take a different route. Oh, or is this? Yeah, taking a different route. Future Flash on the left there, but didn't work out. And then towards the end of the race, let's see what happens here.
Oh, I see. Yeah, he went too straight on the final barrel roll, right? That makes sense now. If he went more into the center, he'll be able to turn a lot easier, you know, with the turning capacity there. It would have been a lot easier for him to go that side. But sadly for him, because he barrel rolled so fast, of course, it's very hard to turn and it's going to keep you on that straight and narrow line. So, of course, that meant that he's going to crash straight into the railings. That is so unfortunate. It really is indeed.
And that means, of course, that like that was what, an in-game difference of a meter, maybe slightly less.
Yeah.
Actually was the difference between going to a map 3 and crashing out of the bracket entirely. That is rough for Nilo, but it's not like they don't know what went wrong there. I have a feeling that's just end of race nerves. Goes to show it's not just at the beginning.
Yeah, he knew that Future Flash was directly behind him. I kind of felt like he didn't have to go over that jump anyway, but it's best to be safe to do what you know and just to absolutely secure that track too. But it just wasn't to be. I'm just surprised. It's just a shame that he barrel rolled so fast that he couldn't make that turning. It was just unbelievable. If it was just a standard barrel roll you normally see, it would have been perfectly fine.
Let's go ahead now and take a look at what the bracket looks like after that first matchup. We have concluded that now, and Future Flash is going to be advancing to the finals to face one of Fra or Alex, but that scoreline is very, very deceptive. Nilo there on that second track actually had it in the bag until literally the last mistake I think you can make, he made and handed Future Flash the 2-0 victory. It's a lot closer than that scoreline suggests.
Yeah, it's not something that we normally see on Asphalt, is it? Normally it happens during the first lap or at some stage, something like that. But to see that towards the very end, it's definitely a rare occurrence in itself. But like I said, it happens to the best of us. You know, not everyone is a perfectionist. Some people do make mistakes. And for Future Flash, that's definitely going to boost his confidence. Of course, there was only one thing he did. We missed one of the first jumps on the first lap. But apart from that, it was very good indeed what he was doing. Taking a few more risks here and there to get a little bit more nitro. I like the way he was playing so far. And I think after last season, where sadly he fell short due to, I think it was a bit of lag, he said before, right. I'm hoping this time around he's going to feel a lot better about himself going into the finals here and hopefully take another championship potentially.
So now we're going to be thinking about Fra versus Alex. One of these players is going to be taking on Future Flash in the final. What can you tell me about these players? And looking ahead, now that we know that they're going to be taking on Future Flash, do we feel like one or the other is a closer opponent or would provide stiffer competition?
In terms of competition, I feel like Alex is going to be the one here. Not saying who should take it, but should show the highest level of consistency on this game across the board. He's made so many finals, lacked a few championships in his time. He's had so many second places, you probably count it on both his hands. It's just absolute mammoth in itself. But last time I witnessed him, he came top 4 in Milan Games Week in 2019. I haven't seen too much of him here in the Snapdragon Pro Series in the past seasons, but he is a very, very strong contender. And I do believe the last time they faced each other in an offline environment, it was 3-2 to Alex. So it does show that Fra not only has a lot to prove, but shows that he can hang with the best here. And I'm sure he's going to put on a really good showing against Alex here in this next match. Sadly, it's a best of 3. I wish it was a best of 11, but you know, we can't.
Well, yes.
We can't have it all, can we? So
sadly not. I mean, we will get a best of 5 in the final for what it's worth, but only one of these drivers is going to be going through to that. Just as a reminder for anyone just tuning in, welcome. You are watching Asphalt 9. It's the Snapdragon Pro Series. When winning matters, a better processor in your phone conveniently leads to more frames. And on mobile gaming, that is a big, big deal indeed. So these players will be extremely appreciative of that. And of course, a thank you to Snapdragon for allowing us to put the competition on as a whole. We're now moving into our second semi-final of today. We talked a little bit about Fra and Alex already, and how Alex might be a little bit of a more seasoned competitor when it comes to facing off against Future Flash, which is very reasonable. But that also, I would say, gives Fra a bigger point to prove. And I think that if we're going to see a surprise sprung on us today, one of these players winning by way more than we think they would, Fra's put himself in the perfect position to say, hey guys, guess what? Not only am I back, I'm back.
A lot of people follow the Snapdragon Pro Series for Asphalt for the last couple of years. Probably a lot of people haven't seen Fra, but I'm certain that in a competitive scene for Asphalt, everyone should know who Fra is in terms of how much of a strong contender he is. And even in terms of how he qualified, he actually qualified by the tiniest amount. I think it was like a few hundredths of a second or something like that against, funny enough, Alex.
Well,
and speaking of the devil, here we go. These are the times here. And yeah, look at that. Literally just under 700ths of a second on a map like Freedom Roosters, where it's definitely indicating itself on what is to come here. And it depends if Alex can take him down again or if Fra can stop history from repeating itself and take him down and make it to that final.
156.316 plays 156.382. I mean, it does get closer than that, but honestly, not by much. This is This is going to be very interesting to watch. We do have to point out, though, and I know we sound like a broken record sometimes when we mention it, that's time trials, and I don't know how many attempts these players have needed to get to those sort of qualifying times. It is a very, very different beast when we get into race mode, and like we just saw with Nilo, the pressure gets to absolutely everyone. In terms of competitive experience here, ignoring Future Flash in the final, would you say Fra or Alex have a particular advantage, or not really?
I actually don't know, mate. This is one matchup I actually don't know. Normally, 9 times out of 10, I'd normally say Alex anyway, just because of what he's proven himself as a veteran player and how he's performed so well. But the reason why I'm saying I don't know, and I'm not really favouring too much either side as of yet, it depends on how much practice they put in leading up to this event. And I think that's what it comes to, whoever wants it more. Because when you've got times like this, I know, of course, time trials is entirely different in comparison, because I remember back when I would time trial to try and qualify for something, I'd probably do the track about 1,000 times at least, or at least 500 in order to, you know, at least get what you think you're comfortable with. And I'm sure these guys have done exactly the same. But if anything, I think if both players put the same amount of practice in and for the tracks and same preparation, I would probably say Alex by about 55-45. We know Frava hasn't been part of the Snapdragon Pro Series for a long time, but I don't think that's going to hinder him too much. He's still a very strong contender, and I do feel like it can go either way. And if it doesn't go to a track 3, then yeah, I'll be shocked. I'll be absolutely shocked. We'll see.
So that third qualifier then, the Freedom Route in Scotland, but that of course is not where they are going to be racing today. This is going to be a best of 3 semi-final. Let's take a look at the tracks that our competitors are going to be using today. Surprisingly, the same as the other semi-final. But for a recap, we've got the Streets of San Francisco, Cliffhanger, and Starting Grid. Might finally see Auckland.
We might do, mate, because, you know, Auckland is a really good map. I quite enjoy it just in general, with the tight corners, the narrow margins you've got to make, you know, the lines you've got to take and stuff like that. If you're a very experienced driver, you can definitely make an impact against your opponents on this track in particular. But so like I said, I can't rule out Himalayas. We've already seen it once, and it won't be surprising if we see it again if any of the see a catastrophe between one of these players, if they're trying to, you know, close the gap because they've got to take a few risks or anything like that. But with Cliffhanger on Himalayas, there isn't really much room to, you know, barrel roll off any of these straight jumps. On some of the other tracks in Himalayas, you can. Exactly, yeah, you can. But on Cliffhanger, there's not really much room for it. Maybe ride a few guard railings or a few bits and pieces here. But even then, no, it's a tough ask. Maybe a small jump you can 360 off to get it to the finish line, not like what we saw from Nilo. So a lot of little things here and there. San Fran will be the indicator once again to the streets of San Francisco, and we'll have to see exactly how things will pan out there. But out of all the jumps we saw in Himalayas, that was still the one jump I didn't expect at all. But predictions, though, I'd probably still say Alex by 55-45, like the smallest of margins.
Okay, I'm gonna support the unknown quantity here. I want to see Fra come out of the gate swinging and really show us and surprise us maybe a little bit. Maybe we've seen him a little less than some of the other competitors over the last couple of years. I would love him to come out swinging and get a solid dub on track 1.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, because it's like I said, people can't really underestimate this guy. He's put on some good trials, some good runs. It's like, just like the rest of them, isn't like a track specialist in any way. He's very consistent across the board, very similar to Alex. But Alex, for now, he must be, that win at some point is well overdue. Like, Jesus, it should have been ages ago he's had a victory. We've had it at, you know, Gamescom in 2019 where he lost to the Korean player driver. He lost to Future Flash in 2019. He's had numerous second places here as well throughout the season of Snapdragon Pro Series. Right. So when will it happen? Hopefully this will be the one. We'll see.
How important is the start of the race in San Francisco? And I ask this because our first semi-final looked fairly straightforward. Future Flash got a slender lead and simply protected it. It didn't look like there was anything too technical. It also didn't look like there was that much Nilo could do to get ahead once he did fall behind. Is that the case, or did the first semi-final just make it look that way?
I kind of feel like having the lead on Asphalt, no matter which Asphalt it is, it's super, super important, especially if your opponent is directly behind you. Sometimes you have to pull back either just a little bit, or if you're going up one of these jumps, especially one of the barrel roll jumps, then you're going to have to go on more to the left-hand side, more into the inner side, shall we say. So you won't get as much airtime. You won't get as much nitro, which is going to help increase the lead for your opponent, because there's either two ways you can go about it. You can either go more the inner side, so you can get a bit more barrel rolls but less airtime, or you can break just a tiny bit so you can get the full effect, the same as your opponent. It depends exactly what's more beneficial for yourself, and that's something you've got to think about on the fly. It's more something you've got to think about there and then. And to be fair, I would say that even if it's by a couple of tenths of a second, it doesn't mean too much. But you've seen the drivers so far, and it seems like it doesn't matter what happens. They're a very clean driver. Very rare you see these crashing mistakes, and that's something they're going to have to think about when the moment comes, really.
What would be the reason why you'd want to take the inside of a ramp more specifically when your opponent is right behind you? Is that more sort of damage mitigation to avoid them doing something dirty, or what's the reasoning behind that for viewers who maybe are tuning in for the first time or are less in the know with 1v1 competitive and our time trial specialists?
You normally get more airtime if you come on the outside. It depends which ramp it is as well. And on the inner side, sometimes if you do a barrel roll off it, you get more barrel rolls, so it means you'll get a bit more nitro as well. So it depends how you go about it. But because you do get more airtime, there's always that very rare occurrence you may actually land on top of your opponent. And people think, oh, that's a rare case. No, I've seen it so many times. It's actually ridiculous. And speaking of the devil, Alex just knocked for a tad, so didn't really get as much mileage around that last bend, but it looks like Fra now using that perfect nitro, using the double now to try and catch up onto Alex. But this is a nice little early lead here from both these players. Alex is going for the shockwave across that last jump, was Fra using that perfect nitro. And Alex now going to go around this next bend, save it for the shockwave, as he will be using a shockwave up both these jumps. We're going to see if he does use the 360 over this next bend, and he does not, which means it's understandable. He wants to keep it as clean as possible, doesn't want to risk it. He's got a good enough lead, probably about half a second. No reason he has to as of yet.
Yeah, we saw him push for just a little nudge on the outside off of the start line there, and it looks like that gave Alex the advantage that he needed to try and get to the halfway point of this race in front. Fra continuing to use up all of his nitro to try and stay within touching distance. Let's see what they get off of this ramp. That looks very good, and he might be in a position to catch up here, but he's still behind.
He certainly is. Fra's line wasn't too good going under the bridge, but his line was spectacular going up that last jump. So Alex probably knows this, especially from the sound, because of him being directly behind him. So just could be a little more cautious now as he goes across this next jump, using the shockwave, perfectly timed, nice drift as well. Using that perfect nitro now to go underneath this next bend. So it's going to be the same thing again. We're going to use the shockwave to go up these next two jumps, and we're going to see if Alex does risk using the 360 up this next bit. But it looks like Fra will be doing it, absolutely, and perfectly understandable. It's like I said, that's probably one of the very small amount of bits and pieces you can use in order to try and close the gap. But Alex has still managed to extend his lead, even with some of the clean lines Fra has made.
Exactly. I feel like some of the, not mistakes, but some of the lines Fra has chosen are clearly slower, and even though he's taking these risks and clawing back a little bit of time, on the whole, it feels like Alex is just continuing to build his lead.
Certainly is indeed. Going up to that last jump, and Alex will be taking the first track here. And Fra, commiserations to him, has still got a couple more chances to try and create that reverse sweep. And they are driving a Lotus Evija, if anyone wanted to know. And, it's an incredible car in itself. Like, honestly, it really is an incredible car to drive. And going into this now, Fra's going to be debating what he wants to do next and how he's going to go about it. The fact that Alex had that early lead and he knew that he was ahead by half a second, he didn't need to do that 360 after those two jumps after the shockwave. He knew there was just absolutely no need for it. It was not necessary at all in the slightest. And a lot of the lines were clean from him anyway. Some of what Fra was doing in terms of the lines he was taking were cleaner, a bit more refined, but by then it was too little too late. I think that one little bash at the start with the amount of mileage he lost in terms of the speeds he used to try and get across was what cost him the most. So it was the very start which made him lose that first track.
Let's take a look at a couple of moments there from that race. It certainly looked like Fra was better in bits, but worse in others. And it feels like the consistency might have won Alex out there. There's the little nudge. And that's Fra on the outside and Alex pulling away. And here you can see he's still very much just in front of Fra at this point. But it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, that gap. At the end of lap number 2, you could see Alex had almost doubled the gap to Fra. And honestly, from Alex's shoes, it felt comfortable. From Fra's point of view, it must have been weird because there were sections of the track where Fra was definitely gaining, and then he would just lose that advantage equally quickly.
Yeah, the only small mistake I probably think about is when he was going up the high ground as well over those 2 jumps, and when he was able to 360 afterwards to gain more nitro and more airtime. Yep. He crashed into the side a little bit, but then again, it's kind of like it doesn't really matter too much. Yes, you lost a bit of speed, but he's got nitro to pick it up, but it's only going to gain another 1/10 or 2/10 of a second. And by then, he had to close a 6 to 8, maybe 10th second of a gap. And it was just way, way too much by then. I think Fra realised that as well. It doesn't matter how perfect and refined your game mechanics are going to be. But Alex does take the first track. We did say that not really a major favourite between the two, but if anything, Alex might. And you said Fra could as well. And I think he could do as well. I still feel like Fra played extremely well. So to shame about the mishap at the very beginning. But this is the issue you see when you get the inside lane at the start of that track.
I'm now beginning to wonder how much of this could come down to track preference, because being able to finish a second ahead of your opponent over 2 laps is pretty comfortable at this sort of level from Alex, let's be honest. And he's going to know that he was increasing that gap as well. So maybe Fra likes some of the other tracks better, and we could actually see a different face. The problem is he's only got 1 chance to prove it now, because if he doesn't win this next one, his opponent wins 2-0.
Well, this is it. With Himalayas now, though, he's got more room to try and close the gap if he needs to. If it was a different track other than Cliffhanger, I would have said he's got more opportunities and more of a wide variety of strategies he can use to close the gap. But the problem is, though, for him, is that with Cliffhanger, there's not as much of that. There's still enough there to be able to do something about it if Alex does take a huge lead. But there is some parts of the track where you can use a 360, even on the smallest of jumps, to try and gain that nitro. But it looks like Alex is going to get with an early little lead here with Fra directly behind them. Both are going to barrel roll jump. It looks like Fra's going to get more airtime here. He's going to be jumping across here, backed into just slightly, but should be able to shockwave afterwards. He did go off the track just a little bit and lost a bit of speed, but he did get more nitro, so he's able to stay level pegging here. As they both barrel roll again, but Alex gets wrecked, and this is going to be Fra's chance now to keep this lead. And also, just need to be cautious of what he needs to do.
That was very, very high intensity to start. You could tell that Fra got that early nitro lead. You could see he got a better barrel roll off the ramp. Really good at building that up. And then a little bit of a mistake from Fra, not able to keep the line, allowing Alex back into the lead. But Alex repays the favor straight away, wrecking himself.
He certainly does indeed. I kind of feel like players like Alex is one of the very, very, very few drivers who is very strong at putting the pressure on the opponent in front of him. Like, very good at that. And it's definitely his strong mental game overall. But with a crash like this, there's literally nothing you can do. You can see that Alex just missed the last jump. He pretty much knows it's over at this point unless Fra makes a monumental or a huge mistake in itself. But after missing that last jump as well, even if Fra crashes, I do feel like Alex should be able to come out of this Fra should come out of this to victory.
I think so. Alex there essentially conceding defeat here. But to be fair, he's probably already thinking about Auckland, right? He's thinking ahead to how he could get into the grand finals after making up for this mistake there. That's why winning the first track is so, so important. Alex can afford to make this mistake.
He certainly can, yeah, absolutely. He, after a couple missed jumps from Fra earlier on towards that last part of the first lap, that's a true indicator where if Fra crashes, then it's fine. But it depends on the circumstance of how long it will be till he's replaced back onto the track. But Fra now is just basically doing his victory lap here so far. John, as he's just going across here with that double nitro, gonna not even bother with the last bend. He probably saw what happened to Nilo and thought, I'm not having any part of that at all. Alex is going to come in as well. And there we have it, 1 apiece, and we're going to see what happens at Auckland.
Very, very wise there from Fra. So a comfortable victory over Alex due to an early match wreck. That was a little bit rough for Alex, but at the same time, we saw it in San Francisco as well. Alex is quite aggressive off the start line, wants to make sure he gets that early jockeying position. He's able to build that advantage from the get-go. And I think maybe the pressure just got to him here. Let's take a look at that again in a replay, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened there, Harry. I can't really have another explanation for it.
Yeah, I feel like when he was going over that one of the first jumps after turning around that corner, and after he had a considerable lead as well, I think he was just trying to ride the railing, but the things are just mistimed the turning just a little bit, and in the end was taken down, which is a little bit of a shame. But it has to be done in order to get that large amount of nitro there to keep the pressure onto your opponent, even whilst having the lead. But after that, though, after the second half of the first lap and the second lap, it's like I said, it was a victory lap here for Fry. He didn't really need to do too much else. He saw what happened to Nilo before. He didn't want to take a risk again. He's basically playing it safe rather than sorry. And we mentioned it as well with Alex, the fact that he's thinking about Auckland. And with Himalayas, I would probably say it is where good players come to die, or you can pick your poison depending on what track you want to do on Himalayas. Cliffhanger isn't as bad as some of the other tracks you normally see on the Himalayas, but I think for that one, yeah, you saw Alex, it had absolutely no chance. At this high level, one crash, you're done. One and done.
Exactly. Very much one and done, almost at the start of the race as well. And it's good to see them piling pressure on each other as well. You know, they both want it. I think you mentioned it in the pre-show that it could be thin edges and it's whoever wants it more. We didn't necessarily get to see the best of Fra as a result. I would have loved to see how he would continue from that point and defend a narrow lead against Alex and show us that he's capable of soaking up that pressure. We might get that in Auckland, though. Who knows?
Yeah, we might do. We'll have to see exactly what the consequences are going to be, though, around some of these bends, because these bends are very narrow and very sharp, and it's quite difficult to, you know, be quite consistent on this track in particular. But as long as they're very well refined and they've got good mechanics and they can take these lines as smooth as possible, it shouldn't be too much of an issue here. And as you can see, Fra with 2 minutes and 14.465, not too shabby at all. We're going to see if he can go on to the third and final track and may even potentially take the series. I wouldn't say this is an upset, but normally we do see Alex in a lot of grand finals, so it would be weird in itself. We'll definitely feel a bit uncomfortable knowing that it's weird that he's not in a final, like trying to grab that first trophy. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But if he did lose against Fry, that wouldn't surprise me. He's, like I said before, he's a very strong contender, and I think this is a great track to, you know, as a decider to see who's going to come out on top. And I think one of the other consequences is going to be is the fact that who's going to be able to get that inside lane to be able to throw your opponent off, who's going to knock each other about at the start. We've seen a few dirty tricks here and there. We've seen Alex do it in the first one, and he did it a little bit on the second one as well, but it helped massively, and it would have helped him definitely if it didn't cause that fiasco of that crash on the Himalayas, the cliffhangers.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, the pressure affects all of the players here. I think it's reassuring and good to see that pretty much all of our players are making small mistakes here and there. I'm not sure I could instantly recall like a big future Flash mistake, but he could be saving it for the grand final. Who knows? Every other driver has had some mistake that has caused them to either stay behind or potentially win by capitalizing on someone else's. So it's nice to see that even at this level, it's just as tricky.
It certainly is indeed. And we can see that Alex does have the inside lane, so we'll get a slight lead coming out here at the very beginning. And we've got both of them using that shockwave, trying to get around. That was very dicey indeed. But look at the mileage he's lost, the speed he lost there. So unfortunate, considering, because he was pushed just a little bit onto the railings here. And the question is, what can he do now? It's not a crash, so he's not going to be behind by like 2.5, 3 seconds, anything like that. But, you know, this is where he's going to have to wait for Alex to try and make another major mistake.
Yeah, I think so, unfortunately. The extra 360, they're definitely not worth it. Didn't quite get the line right to capitalize on gaining that nitro. And as you guys can see, it clearly wasn't worth it for Fra. So it's advantage Alex in this decider in the best of 3. It's down to whether Alex is going to be able to make a mistake, and at the moment, he's cruising.
He certainly is indeed. You can see Fry using that double nitro off the last jump before going to lap number 2 to have that turning capacity, because of course using that perfect little shockwave, you're pretty much doom and gloom there, and you won't be getting any further at all. But yeah, Alex is pretty, I think at this point, when you're about 2 seconds ahead, you kind of, in terms of your mental state, you kind of feel like it's a time trial. You just got basically just get it complete, get it finished, get it done, and then you'll be smooth sailing into the finals. But this does mean, though, John, is the fact that for Alex, if he does make it to this final and does finish up this track in first place, then we will see a Milan Games Week repeat final, because it was actually Future Flash who defeated Alex 3-2 last time, and we're going to get it once more. So this will be very interesting in itself.
I'm looking forward to that. I remember that, and it was a really fun final to watch as well. This would be a fantastic repeat if we do get it, but let's not speak too soon. The last thing I'd want to do is jinx something on the final corner or similar, shall we say. But I have to say, Alex here, he's looking pretty chilled out. There isn't pressure behind him. This is a different situation to what we saw in the first semi-final. It is, like you say, a bit of a victory, that.
Yeah, it literally is at the moment, and he's just smooth sailing from here. It's not really taking any risks, just making sure he does the absolute basics to get the job done. And when I say basics, you mean, you know, not too many speed tricks here and there, just making sure that he's smooth sailing, and it looks like it's going to be the case. He's going to double nudge up the last jump. He's going to go over across here to try and patch things up, which he has done. Well played from Alex. Sadly, it wasn't the start Fra wanted. He realises this. It's just one of those things. And sadly, the shoot was on the other foot here. As you can see, won by 8 seconds. I wouldn't say it reflects how Fra performed. It was just the amount of speed and mileage he lost at the very start. Plus, I think he pretty much gave up then as well, knowing just added on to the time restraints here and the time comparison. So sadly for Fra, we will see him in the third place playoff though. But Alex will be seeing a repeat final between Future Flash and Alex. Should be a good one here, John.
Very, very delicious best of 5 grand final coming up indeed. Commiserations to Fra there. Perhaps just a sign of taking on the bigger risk and not reaping the reward there. So really nice to see. Let's get a bit of a replay for what happened there, so you guys can see exactly what happened with Fra at the beginning of that race. And Alex just unfortunately able to capitalize on it. Let's take a look one more time.
And this is it as well, because Alex has got the inside as well. He is going to get a slight lead here, as you can see. But once Fra was drifting across here, things are looking pretty good so far, using that shockwave. But as he went over the jump, it was the railing which he hit. But after the 360, he crashed again. And then that's when it was just too much. It was basically an equivalent of a crash almost anyway, so...
Yeah, unfortunately, that moment defined race number 3 there. It does mean, though, that, well, Alex is through. 2-1 as opposed to 2-0. So Future Flash will be looking at that going, oh, okay, maybe I am the fresher of the 2 drivers here. But again, that was also down to a very, very early mistake from Alex. How much should we be reading into that going into the grand final?
I wouldn't read into it too much, because I'm hoping that he's probably thinking, thank God that happened in a semi and not in a not in a grand final. But
sure, for
Future Flash though, he's to think to himself, okay, he's seen the kind of tactics in the slight dirty plays that Alex likes to do in terms of abusing the inside lane at the start. So he's going to try and avoid that at all costs. He'd rather, you know, be behind him by half a second rather than 3/4 to a whole second with that kind of shenanigans as well. But I'm not really too sure how it works really. I'm not too sure if maybe because Future Flash is the first seed, maybe he gets to choose which lane he will be going in comparison. So Alex may not be able to use the same game plan as he was able to in the past, or maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's at random depending on like who gets that inside lane. But we'll see how things will turn out. But I do feel like Future Flash is going to be quite confident going to the final after what he saw from the other semi-final, especially with the crash Alex made, which was actually self-inflicted and not really encouraged by his opponent.
The nerves get to everyone, man. But if it turns out that
sure
we're
does.
actually weaving the story where the nerves get to everyone except Future Flash, then I think in that eventuality, he's going to be an unbelievably worthy champion if it happens. I like it that these 2 semi-finals have shown us that the nerves can get to literally the top 4 fastest races we can bring here. So maybe we'll see a couple of dents in the armor going into the grand final. And I want to see both drivers making mistakes. I want to see them at their best as well. But the whole point of this competition format is to have them push each other all the way.
Yeah, exactly. But if you guys are going to crash, do it on the second lap because it makes a lot more sense for us, doesn't it? Because we've got something a bit more to talk about, really. But it is what it is. It's like I said with Asphalt as well. Majority of the time, you will see these mistakes on the first lap because they want to try and close the gap or try and regain the lead early. And they kind of feel like if they can't get it at the start, then when can they get it? You know, this is going to be the issue. And then you get a rare occurrence like Nilo where it happens directly before the finish line, which I'm still not going to go over. I'm sure he won't either, but he's going to have to wait till next season, sadly. But we'll have to see how things go, Future Flash and Ali. I'm just happy that history's repeated itself. We're going to see another final between these two. And to see exactly if it's going to be a similar scoreline, if it's going to be the same, if Flash takes it twice on the trot, or if Alex will actually be able to finally get that victory, because he's definitely a very well-deserved player, and it's, as I said before, definitely overdue.
Well, yes, the job is not done for any of our drivers yet. We've got the third place decider and the grand final to come. So keep that adrenaline going, just that little bit of extra energy to take you over the line. And a huge thank you as well, of course, to one of our sponsors here, Monster Energy, who have been able to help us keep the Snapdragon Pro Series moving forward. They've done a tremendous job alongside Snapdragon and everybody else. I've got a couple of favorite flavors myself in the fridge. No joke. I think do you tend to go sugar or no sugar with your energy drinks, actually?
I'll be honest, it's a sugar job for me, mate. It has to be a bit of sugar. And if it's a mango loco, I'm all for it, because one of my favourite fruits, mango, when I tried it, that was it. It actually blew my brain pretty much how good it was. So, yeah, I'm not saying I've got a little bit of an addiction to it, but, you know, with that kind of flavour, it is definitely one of my favourites by a country mile.
I used to really like the fruit flavors, and I still do, but for some reason, the Valentino Rossi limited edition one, from a sugar point of view, like the regular flavors, I absolutely love that. And if
I've
I
not tried that, actually.
I always pick that one up. And then if I'm on a no sugar day, I'll take the Silver Ultra. For me, it's the instant go-to flavor of choice.
Oh, you see, I need to go get a few at my local corner shop after this now.
Mate, esports.
You're an awful human being. Awful. That is true. That is true.
So we've got the third place decider coming up, and then the grand finals, which means our finalists, of course, will have a little bit of time to relax. Let's take a look at the bracket so that you guys know who is going to be competing coming up next. So the third place decider will occur first. It's Nilo versus Fra. Now, from what we've seen today, Lethal, do you think, do you want to revise your estimates of how close this is going to be, or do we still think this will be neck and neck?
I think it has the potential to be neck and neck. Every single one of these drivers on the iOS platform are very tight-knit in terms of skill level. And, you know, there's nothing they can't not hide from each other. There's nothing they don't know. Maybe there's tiniest bits here and there, but even then it's very difficult in itself. But for Nilo and Fra, I'd probably say, from what we've seen so far, maybe Fra, but Nilo looked very good against Future Flash on that second track there. The only problem was that obviously final moments on the second track. So depending on the tracks itself going into it, we'll have to see. I'll probably be able to make more of a decision depending on the circumstances. But if there's a few more tracks with a bit more spacing and a lot less risks involved, I think Fra could be okay here to be a winner, but we'll have to see.
I'm going to stay on the fence. I actually don't know. I feel like of the two drivers,
I know, right?
Nilo made the bigger mistake, but Nilo also made fewer mistakes overall. So I'm a little bit not really sure. It honestly depends on what these guys had for cereal for breakfast this morning, I reckon. I've got no idea who's going to come out on top. Let's take a look at the tracks that these races are going to be driving in the semi-final, while the third place decider. So they are still in this, of course, and there is still money on the line for third place versus fourth place. This time, different track list. We've refreshed it a little bit. We're going to be starting on Wildlands, and we'll definitely be going on to Long Run in Nevada. And if required, we've got Mode Finale from Osaka. What do you think of these tracks?
Okay, I was talking about spacing earlier. We do have a little bit of both as well, especially with Long Run on Nevada. There's plenty of spacing there too. I kind of feel like with tracks like Nevada, I think I spoke about it earlier on the qualifiers, where it's more about refining your lines and your mechanics going around some of these corners rather than it is about any riskier-esque plays. For Wildlands in Scotland, there's a lot of spacing, but also at the same time there's a few risks, especially around those bridges. So it depends exactly what risk they want to take in order to see what speed tricks or what shenanigans they do get up to. Osaka on Mode Finale, this is an interesting one. This is going to be probably one of the hardest tracks for these two guys to be able to try and throw each other off one way or another. It's probably more difficult to compete on compared to Long Run and Wildlands. So I would like to see this go to a third and final track to see exactly how they go about racing against each other on this, especially in a 1v1 format. But Nevada, though, with Long Run, I kind of feel like a player like Fra may be able to excel at this, whilst on Finilo's side, he may be able to walk away with it on Wildlands as well. But I hope it does go to Moat Finale, because that should be an absolute slobber knocker if we go to that final one.
I think that'll be a lot of fun indeed. Based on what we've seen in the first two semi-finals, what worries me, I don't know if worry is the right word, because it would end up being really exciting, Lethal, if we're honest. I think that we go to Moat Finale because they make a fatal mistake each, if that makes sense. It feels like the nerves, to some extent, got the better of both of them during their semi-finals. So rather than just see two drivers execute perfect lines and you have excellent use of their nitro throughout, I want to see a little bit of tussle. I want to see a little bit of pressure. I want to see the mistakes start to happen under that pressure and have the story develop that way, rather than just see them nose to tail, flag to flag.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I feel like for Fra as well, there's the odd track or two where he seems like his lines are really good, and there's some where some big like misplays or mishaps here, but it's a lot of minor faults, which is equivalent to some major ones, really. And for Nilo, though, he does seem a lot more consistent now. I basically compared it to a driving test at this point, isn't it? But I do feel like, I might even change my prediction. It's tough because I feel like Fra is ever so slightly the better player, but I think he's more track dependent, possibly, from what I've seen in the previous moments. But I do feel like for Nilo, though, it's tougher because he did put on a really strong performance against Future Flash. It should have been a 2-1, really, to like one of the players in either side. But I'm just going to risk it. I'll say Fra for now, but if I'm wrong, then, I've got 2 out of 2 so far. I'll make it 2 out of 3. It's fine.
You're doing all right. So, yeah, to continue using your analogy, it was Nilo with the major fault. But Fra had more minors, so we're going to have to wait and see. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. So you're going with Fra. I think I'm going with Nilo, but I'm not confident going with Nilo. I feel like it's just going to be a really nice, really close race. And,
it's difficult because for Nilo, though, that one mishap, I feel like it could have happened to anyone. It's just a shame that he barrel rolled so much that he didn't have the durability to turn it. And I kind of feel like, I'm not saying that could have happened to anyone, but it was just so unfortunate. I wouldn't say it's something he too much of a self-inflicted mistake himself. It was just by the smallest of margins, he ended up barrel rolling that much. That's why, I can understand you go for Nilo's side, because I kind of feel like he's a lot less mistakes in comparison. But speaking of the man himself, Nilo, we'll be starting off with him. Just got a slight edge on the inside lane and does have the slight lead as well. Drifting across here, going up this next jump, just in time, managed to get the shockwave going on this next bridge.
So Nilo there getting the early lead, using the tiniest bit of nitro early on to stay ahead on the inside. Fra's going to have to play catch up, but extremely close between the two at the moment. Extra 360 there from Nilo. Fra unable to move forward and capitalize yet, although they have now taken slightly different routes.
Yeah, they have done indeed, as Nilo now just shockwaving over that next jump. He's going to be looking to go this next bend as well. Good turning, using that double nitro for obviously the turning capacity. And Nilo's still trailing on by. This is a huge lead. And this is what I said about before. I kind of feel, exactly. I kind of feel like Nilo earlier on was actually that one mistake. It could have happened to anyone, but Fra had a lot of these minor hiccups, which was just adding up. And now it's adding up right now currently. So my prediction is probably going out the window at this point. But Fra trying to do what he can, using that double nitro to go around this next bend here. Trying to close the gap. He still has the opportunity to, but yeah, this is at least a second to a second and a half he's got to try and close on.
I mean, would you say the biggest difference here was the choice of route, and maybe Nilo there knowing his lines just optimally slightly better than Fra, or was there a bigger mistake somewhere that we might have missed?
I think, and Fra just crashed as well. That's just going to add it more to the tally. This is pretty much said and done here. But back to your question, though, I'd probably say Nilo looks more refined. The route is an issue as well, of course. And the Fra, the problem is for him, he needs to take more risks, and it's just not going to work out for him at all in the slightest. But I just think overall it was just much better driving. Honestly, I think that's all it is. And because he extended his lead further, you can see from Fra's perspective, in terms of his mental state. Like, the further Nilo is going to go, the more Far's going to think, right, okay, this is done, off to track number 2.
And we don't say stuff like that lightly. You know, much better driving. It clearly is, but this is much better driving when we're already in the top 4 in Europe and MENA, right? This is absolutely massive to be able to win by this sort of margin. So Nilo clearly putting the mistakes that he had in his semi-final behind him here, showing us what he's capable of, and soundly defeating Fra in this first semi. I said semi-final too many times there, but the 3rd place decider.
Maybe there is a 3rd semi-final. Maybe we're breaking the laws of mathematics here. You never know. You never know. But Nilo, do you know what? I was thinking about changing my prediction just before we started, but I just had Fra on the mind for some reason. But I've got faith in the lad. I've still got faith in him. I know we can do this. But do you know what the worst thing is? I've never seen Fra once have a starting track where he's had the early lead, and it's always been his opponent having the inside lane, and it's been very tough for him. But then again, at the same time, Nilo, his driving was just incredible, like from what we've seen. Very well refined, good use of the nitro, some speed tricks there as well. Just make sure to abuse everything he can just to increase the lead as far as he can. And even with the 8-9 second gap he had at one stage, he just continued it. The guy didn't care at all in the slightest. But the problem now is going on to Nevada. This is where I mentioned that it's a lot wider space. There's not as much risk you can take in order to close that kind of gap. So it does mean if Fra does trail behind, there's not really too much he can do. He needs to put on one of the best performances, or at least get that early lead, or may have to play a little bit dirty at the start. We'll have to see. But Nilo is going to be expecting that, considering how well he performed on Wildlands.
Well, let's take a look at some of those moments from the first race to basically see how well Nilo was driving there. It was phenomenal. We should also get to see, I think, the mistake, or possibly the aftermath of the mistakes that led to Fra's demise there in that first track, that 360. I thought this was Fra's opportunity there, and then the choice of route, I was so surprised at how far ahead Nilo was at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. For Nilo, he was tidy, mate. Absolutely tidy. He was looking super good. We saw a couple of bits Nilo was doing, which Fra wasn't, like you saw with the 360, the route change as well. It just all tallies up, really, doesn't it, here, John? And it just ends up causing the huge gap between the two. But this is what I mean, though, for going on to Nevada now, this is not something Nilo can do, but from how clean he was driving before, I don't see why he just can't abuse the fundamentals and the lines and the corners once again. So we'll have to see if Fra can now at least edge himself at the very beginning. As you can see there, 2:15.131, not too shabby.
He wasn't even really taking the foot off the gas
in
the second half of the race as well. He was almost treating it as a time trial there. Nilo, very consistent, very clean, very, very fast, and making Fra realize, well, this is what you're going to have to contend with if you want to beat me and take this to a decider. So Nilo, incredibly strong there, and I'm not sure what Fra can do, but at the same time, I'm going to echo what you said before the start of this matchup, which is Fra is the joker in the pack. Yes, big mistakes are possible, but I feel like he's got something spectacular in him as well. And if and when we do see that, it's going to be fantastic.
I hope so, because it's like I said before, he's a very, very good driver. We know what he's capable of. I know it's been a couple of years since I've witnessed him be able to perform, but he can still perform at a very high level. And there's no reason why, anyone on this platform can take the championship. We know that Future Flash and Alex has already been confirmed, but you've seen, obviously, it was a close affair between himself and Alex earlier on, and for Nilo as well. So we're going to see now exactly who's going to be able to take this third place. I'm hoping Fra takes it so we could go on to go to a sucker with finale and to see exactly how these two will go at loggerheads against each other. But let's find out, as Nilo will get the inside a slight tad, but Frost is pushing him across a little bit. And I did say we might see a little bit of dirty tactics at the start, and we've seen it from Fra. Good man, good man.
Just a little bit of a love tap there at the beginning to force Nilo into second place. And now we see what Nilo can do from the position where he is catching up. These drivers, as you mentioned before, Lethal, incredibly clean, but Fra basically doing what it takes here to get that early advantage. Can he hold on to it?
Yeah, it's giving a true test here. Of course, they didn't 360 off that last jump because they had enough nitro already, and it just would have been way too risky. Fra now looking to try and keep hold of his lead, shockwaveing through the end of this last bend around the tunnel. And this is where we're going to see how Nino's going to try and approach this, using that single nitro still to try and close the gap even further. And I think he has done by a couple of tenths of a second here. Using that perfect nitro, breaks into the double nitro, go around this next corner here. But it looks like both of them going to shockwave around this next bend. Wall riding now as well to collect a little bit more nitro to consume around this next bend. Both these players timing it well with the shockwave over that barrel roll. And look at this as well. Just 1/10 every 10 seconds he's able to close this out. Double nitro coming out from Nilo again. And this is great use from nitro from both of these players. But this is only the first lap, and Fra better stay on his toes here because literally he's so close from actually being able to overtake him.
I thought that looked like a marginally better line coming into the start of lap number 2 from Nilo as well, getting really close now to the rear bumper of Fra. Fra actually soaking up the pressure quite well, but you can begin. This is where you begin to see the refinement and the slightly different choice of lines start to build and build and build in Nilo's favor. All he's waiting for now is an opportunity to overtake. He still needs that last ingredient. Has he got it now?
Yes, he does. He does. He manages to actually overtaking you, which is a little bit of a shocker in itself. And look at that, using that break nitro trick to get out that tunnel, consume as much as he can. And he's done every trick in the book here. Nilo now so continues that single nitro to carry on forward with the perfect Farge looking to drift and using double to get around this next bend. Shockwaving now over towards the final hurdle here. It's going to be extremely close. Farge doing everything he can in order to try and close this out. Going to barrel roll with the shockwave to try and get a little bit more speed, momentum to try and close it out. But Nilo doing the exact same thing. The only thing which is going to cause Nilo now to lose is a fatal flaw or a crash here. But it looks like he's going to be a lot more cautious this time around in comparison. Manages to take it. Takes it 2-0 here. And it's like I said before, Nilo did look like the better driver in the first track, and he proved that going into the second on Nevada.
I think that was convincing, and that certainly put the full stop on your assessment there that the refinement was so it's subtle, but it's also really noticeable. The way that Nilo was taking some of those lines, he had a wider entry, he stuck closer to the apex on a lot of those corners. He was able to accelerate just that tiniest bit sooner than Fra. And when Fra was out in the lead, that was worth maybe a tenth or two every 5 or 10 seconds. And the more you eat into that, the more opportunities you're going to get to overtake. That was clean from Nilo.
It really was indeed. And it takes a really special driver to be able to close a gap like that, especially when you go against other players with similar mechanics and fundamentals in terms of that skill level. And the only other players I see that is obviously Alex. We've seen him quite a lot. Flash, yes, definitely has it in him. We saw him do it against Nilo of all people. And Nilo's just shown that he was actually doing that against France. So you can kind of see the small gaps between a lot of these players, which is why, you see the skill gap between the top 4 and the top 2 now, which is why I'm so excited to see exactly how this final is going to escalate and how this final is going to, unfold going into it. Yeah, super excited for this, as, it's a final we've definitely seen before, and I could watch this final again and again. I'm glad it's been, a few years since we've seen these two go at loggerheads, and we're going to witness it once more.
Let's take a look at a couple of moments from that last race. Very, very close, absolute tiny edges, but Fra, well, he had the advantage off the start. A little bit of a nudge there gave him a fantastic initial lead over Nilo, but from this point onwards, Nilo really stole the show.
He certainly did, yeah. He probably lost about 5 or 10 kilometers an hour, I would say, around that first bend, but also he couldn't drift as hard either, so he lost a tiny bit of nitro. But just the lines were great. The refinement around some of his corners was beautiful. There was odd moments where using that break nitro trick because of the fact that it's the only way he can not consume too much nitro, but at the same time be able to abuse that nitro trick so that he can get a little bit more speed and be able to close that gap. And in all fairness, when you use that break nitro trick, you only do it if you feel like there's no other way and you're out of options in order to try and overtake your opponent. He did it. I think any track similar on Nevada is probably the perfect choice for it because of the spacing you have. And it was nice to see it get done, and it's nice to see be able to Nino get that third place because it's very well deserved.
So the time from Nilo there as he wins that third place overall, cements that now 2 minutes 32.231. Very, very well driven, and from behind as well. I mean, the consistency and the drive in order to get to that position was fantastic from Nilo. I'm really glad we had a race where the winner won in that manner, because it does showcase the small sort of refinements, the skill differences, the differences in lines, and how they add up. I thought that was a fantastic illustration of how you can make those small incremental improvements to your game.
Yeah, it's not going to lie, it's quite a rare occurrence unless there's a crash. But if you take the crash out, or crashes, out of the equation, then yeah, it normally is quite rare to see anything like that. And I love to see it as well, because it just shows how well or how great we are as a driver perform like that, especially on asphalt.
It absolutely is. And it also means now that we are one step closer to this grand final. It's going to be an absolutely delicious rematch of the finals that we saw in Milan Games Week back in 2019. I don't know how to call this. It was 3-2 back then. It's almost certainly going to be 3-2 now. This will be very, very tight, and I am here for it.
Do you know what? I'm going to be so sad if it doesn't go to all 5 tracks. I want at least 4. I think we're going to get at least 4 no matter what.
4. Definitely not a clean sweep.
No, absolutely not. I don't think so as well. And depending on the tracks as well, I want, a good mixture. I want some with good spacing, so at least that way we can see who the better driver is overall. But I want to see some tracks which does take a lot of thought process and a lot of strategy and a lot of risk and rewards as well. We need a good mixture here going to this best of 5, and I hope we do get that as well.
So after that third place decider, let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket so you guys can get a refreshed vision of what's going on. Well done if you stay here from the start and you were like, John, I know all of this already. What are you doing? We've been watching, but this is the bracket for iOS. Future Flash advancing over Nilo 2-0, although in spectacular fashion after Nilo should have won track number 2. And Alex defeating Fra 2-1 in a really, really tight best of 3 series as well. We've just had the third place match where Nilo has defeated Fra. And we're now going to be moving on to Future Flash versus Alex. This is going to be a nail biter, guys. This is basically the historic. I think of grand finals between any of these 4 drivers would have been exciting, but Future Flash Alex is maybe the matchup that has the most interesting history behind it.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like for Alex as well, he's had so many podium spots, so many, but the man needs a first. I've said it was overdue right at the very beginning, but I feel sorry for the lad as well. He is definitely deserving. One of the best drivers in the world for Asphalt, and we're going to see that hopefully going into this. But in terms of predictions, it's literally a dead on 50-50. In a way Flash is playing, he'd like to do a little, a few more bits and pieces here and there to add more of that nitro game. But Alex is, sure, can be the better driver on some certain circumstances. Just going on to the Urban Exodus in New York, this was actually the second qualifier where Future Flash, he already qualified in the first one anyway, but he dabbled in the other 3 qualifiers as well, just to get a feel for the tracks, but also to compare his times as well. And you can see there just over 0.4 of a second, especially on a track like Urban Exodus. It's definitely a telltale sign, but this ain't time trials. This is 1v1. We've seen these shenanigans they get up to here, especially at the beginning or during that first lap, and we're going to see exactly how they're going to go toe to toe.
So just as a reminder, everyone watching at home, this grand finals is going to be a best of 5. We have completely different tracks this time around, just to mix things up. We're going to be starting with the Pearl of Orient in Shanghai, and then we're going to be moving to Nile River and Whirlwind Curve. And then, if necessary, we'll be going to Paradise Resort, and then City That Never Sleeps. So will we see different styles of driving? Are we going to be seeing the way the players are going to have to drive be mixed up a little bit? What do you think about this list of tracks, Harry?
I think we've been blessed, I feel like, here, John. We've got a mixture of... I said we just need a mixture of everything, and that's exactly what we've got. We've got tracks 2 and 4 where literally they've got all the spacing required, and it's mainly more about who's actually the better driver with their refinement. But, go over to Shanghai as well, even to Caribbean Island as well. There's a lot of little niches here and there they need to try and take advantage of to try and topple their opponent. And I'm very curious to see not just how they refine a lot of these tracks and how they go forward, but what happens at the very beginning. If they're going to let their opponent, continue forward in the inside lane, is there going to be any trickery, which going to cause to misery, like, you know, throughout the entirety of the race here, because both these drivers are so good. If you give them like half a second, they're just going to continue being a half a second. They're that damn good at this stage here. So it's not overtake and then extend. These two are very good, like, honestly, some of the best players in the world globally, not just Alex, but of course Future Flash as well, with some of the, you know, championship victories he's had over the last few years. So, you know, questions can be answered soon here, John. I'm excited. Let's get into the first race here.
Here we go. First race underway. You're on board with Future Flash. He's got the inside going into the first corner. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Harry. We said tracks 2 and 4 in this grand finals. Ooh, hang on a second as Alex takes the lead there. Might favor Alex with a bit more space. Do you think, therefore, it's going to go Future Flash, Alex, and we're going to see him track number 5?
It could be back and forth. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest going into this, but so far, Flash was just a little bit, just managed to stand on his ground there. But in fairness, though, he didn't lose too much speed, so he's probably had a little bit of a cardiac arrest there during that halfway point of falling. He's still, yeah, I know, I did for him as well. But it looks like this is where I'm talking about, where with that half-second gap, Alex knows there is no room to play safe. He's still going to continue being risky.
Yeah. So we are here on Pearl of the Orient. Future Flash already catching up to Alex. I mean, that is, considering what the gap was, what, 15 seconds ago? This is borderline incredible.
It certainly is indeed. And Future Flash is just absolutely having none of it in the moment. Double nitro at that last jump, single again, braking just a tad to save for the shockwave coming up around this next bend. Actually uses the perfect nitro instead, just so he can get that last nitro canister. It's going to perfect nitro again. He's going over for this next barrel roll, but he's so close. He could pretty much taste it. Shockwave over his next bend. He knows that Future Flash is directly behind him from the audio cues, and he is closing the gap very sharply. But the problem is, will he have enough time to be able to overtake? This is going to be the next question, as Alex is going up with a double nitro around, and we're almost finishing with this race.
Alex now essentially inches ahead of Future Flash after that early near miss. What a comeback story this would be. Brushes the wall just a little bit, and I feel like Alex has gotten the tiniest bit of breathing room. I have a feeling that might just be enough to give him the first marker, that first notch on the scoreboard.
He certainly could indeed, as we're going to almost patch things up here. Alex looking very strong and managed to finish that in the end. And even though Future Flash didn't lose too much speed as he fell on the side, it was enough to cost him pretty much. That was identically a full second here between the two.
Really fun stuff going on there. I think that last tiniest error, you could sort of see it, where Future Flash just brushed the wall the tiniest bit, and that caused Alex to be able to get a bit of breathing space again. The gap sort of, it was something like 2 or 3 car lengths at one point. It was crazy close, and Alex building out that half second there meant that he was able to take it in the second half of the second lap. But how on earth did Future Flash close that gap so quickly?
I kind of feel like Alex was just playing it just a little bit safe, and, you know, not fully safe to the point where, you know, he's going to let Future Flash overtake it by any means. But you could see that Alex was playing it safe enough, but not to, in order to make sure it can secure that lead. But maybe Future Flash towards the end was doing a few extra bits and pieces in order to make sure to try and get extra nitro to close the gap. And even towards the end, his lines were so strong, so good as well. And it was just a shame that for him as well, that one little blip on the side when he actually fell over is not only the talking point, but obviously the factor which changed things a tad. But I'm not too sure if Alex would have won. I think he would have done, considering he was already half a second ahead anyway. It's just unfortunate that in terms of the mileage, it's the pressure he had to put on Alex, which he couldn't do, because Alex knew he was probably far enough ahead to not be too risky for the rest of the remaining part of the second lap.
So that was track number 1 of a potential 5 here in the iOS Grand Final. Let's take a look at a couple of the moments from that first track before we move into the next one. We're going into Nile River next, by the way. But we reckon that Pearl of the Orient might have been a Future Flash victory. I was certainly wrong here, and Alex managing to take the spoils after that initial mistake.
Yeah, it seems to be a rare occurrence here. So you give Alex the early lead. There's literally not much you could do here. And this is what's a bit annoying for the player coming from behind. Is you want to decide to yourself, do I want to take a 360 off this small jump for that extra nitro? Will it be worth it for the longevity of this matchup? And this is the kind of risk you need to take here in a 1v1 format. But Alex just played that superbly. Once he has the lead, he's just not really too fussed about it at all. But that's what makes it more annoying for yourself, because it's like, well, he can play as safe as anything. And Future Flash knows that he's not going to, bow down by any means. He's still going to take every jump and treat it like it's a time trial, which just makes it more frustrating for him.
So that is Alex going away with that initial track win. Very well done there. And that was with a time of 2:08.998. We had Future Flash exactly 1 second behind on a 2:09.998. And now we have to beg the question, if Alex's lines are just that tiniest bit crisper, Harry, if he does well and he utilizes the space just that little bit more, I would have to argue that going into Nile River, we have to give Alex the advantage here, and he would be favored to go 2-0 up.
I was thinking that, but the way Future Flash was driving that last track, it was phenomenal. It was still very good how he was closing the gap, but it's like I said before, was Alex playing it too safe? I want to see what happens when Alex is on the back foot and him having to be able to top his opponent here. So we're going to see signs of that, of course, at some stage in this best of 5. There's no way that Alex is going to have the early lead every single time. So we're going to see what happens when Future... Well, do you know what? Actually, technically, I think he's done it every single time so far. So you're probably right, actually. So no reason why he can't still do it.
Well, we are about to find out. We're going to be moving on to track number 2, Nile River. Alex's starts. Maybe this is going to be a theme that we haven't touched on as much yet that we need to. His starts have been absolutely phenomenal. Can he do it again?
Let's find out indeed, as both will be taking slightly different routes after that little scuffle at the very beginning. Alex will have that early lead once more. I think Flash has got a slightly more nitro going over this next jump. We've got the double nitro there, going to be using a shockwave over this next straight. And as you go this next jump as well, both players, I feel like, I was going to say, Alex had a little bit more airtime there in comparison, but Flash still able to close the gap even further. Probably about just a few tenths of a second here. Use a single nitro again, just go around his next corner. Got the perfect as well. The shockwave to boot to finish things up here, and now using the double to over next bend. So looks like both players will be going over different routes again. Alex decided to go under bend over the top again to get more airtime. And look at this, Future Flash directly behind with that shockwave, and has paused it just a tad going over this next jump with the shockwave again.
And it's almost a repeat of track number 1 here, where Alex gets the early lead, but the extent to which Future Flash is able to catch up is almost frightening, and he is now properly on the rear bumper. This is going to be incredibly exciting going into the second lap.
It certainly is, and I love this as well from Alex, using the shockwave, just drifting a little bit more to use the shockwave once again, and now we're going to lap number 2. This is one of the longer races here, or the longer track, shall I say, in comparison. This is where consistency is quite key here, and Flash taking a few risks of his own is actually about to close the gap again. He did actually have a bit of trouble in the past where Alex was able to extend it, but now he's able to even go over the railing as well, just to add more nitro boost for himself. And look at this again, just a couple tenths of a second once more. Double nitro through the cave once again, or through the bridge, shall I say. Using a shockwave to go over the next part of this next bend here. Almost just a little bit of mileage here, but almost gone underneath Alex. Follows behind him, gets more airtime. Shockwave to boot again. Double nitro over the next bit. Alex with more airtime here, so to get a bit more nitro going over the next jump here. There's only about 20 seconds left into it before we get to the finish line here, John. It's so close.
Future Flash hanging on and indeed reining in the coattails of Alex, but it feels like it might be a little bit too little too late. Alex hanging on for dear life, but not making the mistake that we're waiting for. Coming around now, the final bend. Future Flash is right on him, but Alex hangs on.
Literally right up his backside pretty much. That was unreal. And he's going to lose a tiny bit of mileage for Bashley Matad as well. So not really much he could have done there. They both played almost exactly the same. The only difference being was Future Flash on that first lap, not going for under the bridge and then getting more airtime. Instead, Alex was able to do that. And that was definitely one of the difference makers. I kind of feel like Future Flash was the better driver for the majority of it. But because of that one instance, it caused a bit of a gap between the amount of nitro which Alex had in comparison, was able to extend the lead again, but Future Flash was able to close out a bit more, riding the railings, riding the walls. I think at one stage Alex had a tiny bit more airtime with one of the barrel rolls as well, so it was very neck and neck between the two. It was a lot of nitro conversion back and forth here and there, but I kind of felt like that first lap where Future Flash maybe could have gone underneath and got some airtime with that last jump could have been a difference maker.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of moments there from our track number 2. Really exciting stuff. And Harry, is this coming down to we simply need to see Future Flash ahead after the first 5 seconds? Because that's not what we're seeing so far.
No, not at all. It's like I said before, I kind of feel like Future Flash was the better driver in this instance, but at the same time, I'm talking about refinement and how good his lines are. Alex made the bold move and the correct move as well to go underneath and get more airtime from that last jump on the first lap, and that was the difference maker. And you could see, literally rear end pretty much is Future Flash basically giving a nod to say, I'm still behind you, I'm still going to try and make ends meet and make it work. But this is the problem. He's facing against someone like Alex, where he will continue to play like it's a time trial. He will continue to play the same as he always done. He's not going to play that much safer compared to everyone else. And Alex is probably thinking, thank God I didn't, because if I did, miss one jump or do one less barrel roll or one less 360, then that's the difference maker where Future Flash would have 100% overtaken him.
So there we go. Alex being pushed all the way there on track number 2. Future Flash not giving him any room for error. The problem is he's also not really making any errors. That's a 2:04.798, and that puts Alex up 2-0 in this grand final. The question Future Flash must be asking himself right now is, how do I intimidate a robot?
It kind of feels like it at this point, isn't it? In 2:24.79, it's not too shabby. Oh dear me, it makes you wonder now what he can do here. We are going to go to US Midwest for Whirlwind Curve. I actually made a mistake with the terms of space system on the tracks. I meant tracks 2 and 3, not 2 and 4, is because of the layout of the graphic. For some reason I thought, track 2 and 4. But
because you had 2 on the left, 2 on the right. It wasn't immediately obvious. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But so that favors Alex as well. I mean, what more do we have to talk about? This is looking... Alex has looked imperious in this grand final. Like, I know Future Flash has been driving out of his skin, but can we just mention how Alex just doesn't seem to be making any mistakes, however small?
Yeah, it's almost faultless. I can probably pick up some very, very minor mistakes that cost 1 or 2 tenths of a second. But the problem is, if you have to lead, you can risk that because you can force them to bump into you. It means they have to try and get around you. And then you've got risk rather, will my opponent try and push me into the curb or at least on the railings whilst I'm trying to overtake him? If you're both consistently at the same speed, using the same strategies over these jumps, it's really difficult. And you saw that from Future Flash's perspective.
Here we go. It's track number 3. Are we going to see Future Flash ahead? He's got the inside going into the first turn. He's finally ahead of Alex at the beginning of a race. Let's see what he does with it.
Oh, I love that. So riding the railing, go to the next jump as well. This is looking to be a very solid start here. Alex just comes up, but he actually gets knocked down in the end, considering how he just overtook Future Flash. And Future Flash has gone, all right, cheers, mate. You've just pretty much given me the track win now. This could be a 2-1 and the start of a reverse sweep. But poor Alex, you could see what he was going for there.
You just saw him sort of shoot across the front of Future Flash's bonnet, briefly take the lead, and then got knocked down, unfortunately. So Future Flash here really setting us up for the early stage. I don't want to call anything too early, but he's certainly setting us up for the reverse sweep and the comeback quite strongly here. And I would love to see this go to a track 5 either way, but Future Flash is certainly providing the entertainment.
Certainly is indeed. I don't think he's going to be riding any more railings now for the rest of the the rest of the race, is to play it safe rather than sorry. We know how it can be like. Future Flash now, like you said, just doing a victory lap at this stage, just basically drifting back and forth, using the shockwave. He's not really doing anything you know, anything dandy or fancy by any means necessary. As I mentioned before, he's not going to be riding any more railings. He's not going to be doing anything too risky around his barrel rolls. Just going to be safe and steady. Alex is good, but yeah, it's nigh on impossible. He could probably try and reach the realms of filth for possibility, but it's just not going to happen there. But this is good though, you know, it means it's not going to be a clean sweep. It means Flash is going to be feeling a little bit more comfortable knowing just two more tracks. I mean, it's going to think to himself, right, last one, and now he's got to just take it one step at a time here.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of scenario where we go, hang on a second, how is Alex only half a second behind with how Future Flash was driving before, how much ground he was able to make up? But yeah, I think it might just be, unfortunately, a bridge too far for Alex in this particular race. That said, he's 2-0 up in a grand final. He can afford to drop a track like this. Does he want the 3-0 clean sweep? Of course he does. But this is by no means a disaster.
Oh yeah, definitely. Against an opponent like Future Flash, you need to end it as soon as physically possible, because you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile, and that was just a good example of that. And as we can see, a nice little bit of flair at the end in the Lotus Havaya. And there we have it. That one crash, that one instance at this level of play in the top four, one crash is this all it's going to be in order to give your opponent that victory. So it means we're not going to have a 3-0 clean sweep. It means the start of a reverse wave could be occurring here for Future Flash. He's going to be feeling a little bit better about himself. And we still got Paradise Resort and the City That Never Sleeps as well in the next two tracks. I'm very, very excited to see it. I'm sure it's going to go tooth and nail here between the two.
Let's take a couple of looks at key moments from that last race, because really it was the first half of the first lap again that seemed to be dictating the pace of everything. Future Flash finally getting off the start line ahead of Alex, and then in about 3 seconds all hell breaks loose.
It certainly did indeed, and the first 30 seconds was obviously the major focus here, because we did see Future Flash ride the railing, so go over the jump. Ooh. But I'm not too sure what happened there, because obviously we're looking at it from Future Flash's perspective. I should be crashed into another car or into the railings as he was going past. Of course, it can be a little bit different from Future Flash's perspective. But yeah, that one instance, that's it. You're a goner. That's the track pretty much lost. And, and the good thing with Alex is I love his mental fortitude as well. Still making sure to do everything he can in case Future Flash does crash himself by, some sudden mistake, along the line, no matter how safe you play, and then be able to overtake from there. So, like his determination there, but going into Paradise Resort next and then going to the City That Never Sleeps, if it does go to a fifth track, it should be an interesting one. And this is going to be an interesting one itself, going to Paradise Resort. Definitely a lot of risks and jumps you can take in order to abuse some of those speed tricks and consume that nitro as well to the best of the ability. And I love how both these player strategies are very, very, very similar.
So Future Flash pulling one back then. This is going to be very interesting indeed. It's 2-1 going into track number 4 here in the grand finals with a 2:21.198. Future Flash puts himself on the scoreboard, reminds us that even if he's 2-0 down, it doesn't matter because the reverse sweep is possible. And he's keeping us hoping for that all-elusive track number 5 in this iOS grand final. I can't wait. I feel like this is setting us up for a cracker of a race on Paradise Resort.
It certainly is indeed. And it's funny as well, because I did say I'll be interested to see what Alex does if Future Flash has the early lead around that lane. And you saw what he did. He instantly shockwave straight past him, or tried to cause a bit of a scuffle going across. So, yeah, he likes to play a little bit dirty here and there. It's understandable. If it wins you races, then, it's one of those times where you want to do it with there's a low mobility of risk for yourself doing it, rather than, because there's some players where if they play a little bit dirty, then sometimes it's too risky for yourself, because if you miss your opponent's vehicle or you crash by any means, then it's like one of the worst things possible. But he does it where it's low risk for him, but a high chance for him to be able to, the high probability for him to be able to slow his opponent down. But we're not going to see too much about going into it. We know he's got 2 tracks left. Just needs to win one of these to secure victory here in the Snapdragon Pro Series Mobile 4 Asphalt 9 in the second season, because he's so close. We talk about how overdue a victory is, and the fact that he's 2-0, he had a 2-0 lead, he can't lose it now. Surely not.
Oh no, but you can't think like that as well. You have to be thinking ahead. You need to be focusing on the race at hand, and you need to not worry about what's gone on in the past. Let's find out who's ahead in the early stages of this race. Both cars angling towards each other. Alex giving Future Flash a little bit of a bump, but Future Flash having absolutely none of it. He takes the early lead for the second race in a row.
He's not bothered about it, and also Alex didn't get as many barrel rolls in comparison to Flash, so he's got a little bit more nitro leading up to this next bend. But Alex, though, still has the shockwave in hand. Oh, just managed to make that jump, only got the one barrel roll there, and now he's just going to be wall riding to go for that shockwave, and there's still, and I'll probably say about 3/4 of a second to a second now behind Future Flash here, and he's going to be expecting Flash to maybe make some kind of change here going to this next bend. So far, so good here for Flash. Does have the shockwave in hand. Perfect time to use it around this next bend as well. Still
Nerves
using those straight lines.
These guys, what?
Oh, sorry, repeat that again.
Nerves affecting these guys? What? Who would have thought it? It's actually refreshing to see at this point. But are we going to see a mistake from Future Flash? Because we were talking before, we finally saw Alex start to edge him out. But again, in terms of big mistakes, Future Flash hasn't really made many of those, if we're being perfectly honest. He's still looking like, if you gave him complete free reign and allowed him to time trial it, he still looks like the marginally faster driver.
This is what I mean, though. Oh, he missed out on that barrel roll, sadly, so it's going to cost him at least another half a second to a second, and the nitro on top of that. So I'm not too sure, because he didn't miss it last time, but he didn't get as many barrel rolls. But that time he didn't get any at all in the slightest, as he didn't go up the ramp enough in order to be able to do that, which is a bit unfortunate. But that does mean, though, that Future Flash has only got a little bit more time left in order to secure this fourth track. I can't believe I'm saying this. Is the fact that we are going to go to a fifth, considering we thought it was going to be that potential 3-0 victory. But I also mentioned that in those first two tracks, you do feel like Future Flash put on a ton of pressure onto Alex and did a phenomenal job with the lines and how refined he was around some of these bends. But in the end, though, it is going to be Future Flash taking it with Alex 3 seconds behind. Of course, we saw there with that bend on the beach, didn't get as many barrel rolls a second time round, didn't get any at all in the slightest. Things were just adding up, and the mileage he was losing as well, the speed and momentum lost, that's going to cost him even further. And yeah, by then Alex knew that was it. It's all said and done. Even if Flash crashed, he still would have been fine, like by a small amount of time, but he still would have been okay.
So that was Paradise Resort on Caribbean Island. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the moments from that race. The Surely Not potentially is becoming a reality now, and we are 2-2 going on to our final track.
I just can't believe we're going to our final track. That is absolutely insane from what we saw there. But yeah, you can see, a little bit, but Flash stood strong, stood still, kept his line straight, and that's the main factor behind it as well. Sometimes when you do nudge the back of a car just a little bit, it does force your own vehicle to be able to drift a little bit off as well, to lose some of that mileage going forward around that next bend. But he kept it very straight, very concise. He knew that as long as he did that and just kept his, A game and just carried on as he would do normally, he'll be fine. And sadly, if anything, Alex, it cost him more speed more than anything else. I spoke to you earlier. It sounded like a bit of dribble in the end, but I didn't really explain it properly, where the risk you take at the start, he does it so it's a low probability of him crashing or him taking a huge amount of mileage. But that was what I was talking about there. He'll do some little digs here and there, but not enough to be a huge factor in himself. That was it, but sadly for him, he took a little dig, and it just wasn't enough. It's going to probably cost him more than it actually cost Flash. But in the end, 158.765 here, John. Again, a very good time on Paradise Resort on Caribbean Islands, and it looks like we will be heading to the city that never sleeps on New York. Super excited here, and nothing short of spectacular. We wanted a 5-track mania, and it looks like we got it.
We have indeed. It's going to be a 3-2 grand final, but the question is which way. A spectacular start for Alex, but Future Flash pegging him back 2-2. And we're moving on to the city that never sleeps. So it literally is all on this. This one's for all the marbles, Harry. What do you feel about this track as a decider, and would you give an edge to either driver? I rapped. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. To be fair, I was just more impressed by the rap than I was thinking about the prediction. I honestly, this is why I said I honestly don't know either. I said I would give it to Flash, maybe like the very edge at the start. Momentum's heavily in his favour. The fact that he was looking at a second place finish and probably thinking about next season, he's taken it to a 5th and final one. If I honestly think it's going to be deciding on who gets a better start. I feel like if Future Flash gets the early lead at the start, then I feel like he will take it all. If Alex gets the early lead at the start, I still feel like there's room for Flash to bring this back, but the probability is probably a little bit more in his favor compared to Alex.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about as well, because we have seen Future Flash come from a very long way behind to literally nose to tail. So while I agree if Alex stays behind with the question marks about whether he can catch up, Future Flash has proven he can. To what extent do we have to be worried about that?
Oh, going into this track as well, it's going to be a doozy one, is it? And a bit dicey in itself. But here we go here, John. We're going to be going into track number 5 of the grand final here. 2 apiece. If you're just joining us, Future Flash was 2-0 trailing behind. And now it's the 2 apiece. And this is for all the marbles here, John.
He's got the lead. I mean, that's what we were talking about. So Future Flash holding on to that to begin with. We had Alex give him just a little bit of a nudge, but it wasn't enough to deviate from the racing line there. So Future Flash currently with about a third of a second advantage on lap number 1.
Oh, I love that as well. Both his players using that double nitro over that last jump, using the shockwave on top of that straight afterwards here. This is where it's going to be a little bit dicey here. How we're going to try and wall ride this next bend, and how we're going to try and use that shockwave. Uses it perfectly as it goes across here. Future Flash made a couple of mistakes there. Flashed a little bit against the walls to lose him a little bit of speed. And look at that. Alex knows that as well. He knows he can try and close the gap a little bit further here. Use that double nitro to have that turn ability, or the turn capacity rather, to get around this next bend. Future Flash just grinding the wall attack to keep hold of that shockwave as he's going around this next bend. The barrel roll just barely able to make that here, drifting around this next bend to get the shockwave once more before he goes around this next corner.
A lot of drifting here, lots of 90-degree angles, of course, as you get into the city section of this track. And I have to say, I think Alex has managed to stem the flow here. I feel like he's slightly closer to Future Flash than he was this time last lap, although is that going to be a little bit of a troublemaking move? No, not quite. That gap is coming down, but it has to come down a lot faster.
He did that to get an extra 360 to get a little bit more nitro, because he knows that Future Flash has been way too consistent in this series and needs to do something quick and fast in order to add the pressure into this last track. But even now, though, still, Future Flash using the shockwave up this next bend. Alex still trailing behind him, using a double nitro, using the 360 as well to try and get a little bit more as he perfect nitros around this next bend. But the thing is, though, it's going to be so tight here, using a double nitro to get across. Flash is still refining this line so well, and Alex still directly behind him. He has closed the gap just by a couple of tenths of a second, just makes it, but doesn't barrel roll. That could cost him here, using the 360 to try and get across and down, drift across as well, but it's not going to work in his favor. Future Flash, he's going to be your champion here for Season 2. Commiserations to Alex, as you saw there towards the end, who's hoping to get a little bit more from that last jump to gain more nitro and to try and speed past him, but it just wasn't to be. The reverse sweep occurred, happened, and there we have it. Another second place finish for Alex.
Future Flash 3 in a row. Before we talk about that, let's have a recap of that final race of the grand finals. It went all the way to track number 5, but ultimately Future Flash was somehow able to not only claw back the deficit, but keep the momentum going. What an incredible race that was.
It certainly was indeed, and fair play to Alex though for taking a couple of those risks in that second lap, dropping underneath the bridge further whilst he was doing that speed trick to gain a bit more nitro. Fair play to him as well to try and do an extra barrel roll or trying to do a little bit more here. This is the one segment as well, as he was able to try, if he got that barrel roll, that could have been a different story. Look how close that was. I'm not saying that he would be able to overtake him, because you saw there Future Flash had the shockwave in his back pocket, but he was being able to put a certain amount of pressure on, but because he hit the sign towards the second to last jump, sadly didn't have the nitro to be able to overtake him, which is why he did the 360 on a straight and narrow road. But yeah, fair play to him to, you know, take that kind of risk so late on in a grand final.
And to be fair, if he was able to get that barrel roll, like you say, putting that pressure onto Future Flash might mean you've compromised the line. As it stands, Alex's line was actually compromised through the last couple of corners, which is a bit unfortunate, and that meant he couldn't get as close as he wanted to. Future Flash, therefore, wins track number 5 with a 2:13.065. and is crowned your champion here. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Taking up a cool $1,200 as well. Let's not forget, 2-0 down in the grand finals. That pep talk you have to give yourself to make sure you come back in and get that $1,200 for winning. Future Flash has done something very impressive here.
Certainly has done. We know what he's like just in general. Like, he's a very, very confident person in and outside the game. He's probably just saying the same thing as what we was thinking, you know, just take it one track at a time. It's not a 2-0, like, you know, just sort of try and tell yourself that, you know, it's not over till it's over. And he's basically proved that. The fact that Alex made the mistake at the self-inflicted on the third track. The fourth track, he tried to do a bit of a dig on the fourth at the very beginning, and it cost him a bit of speed, and then things escalated and then mistakes were adding up. But Alex still raced extremely well on that final track. It's just a shame that it didn't go his way. These things happen. It just shows that Flash is an incredible driver, extremely consistent, and that's why, you know, we didn't have any favoritism for any of the players here on this platform, but if there was like a 5%, we'd throw it at him, and we can see why. So congratulations to him, and very impressive stuff. Another trophy to the tally, isn't it, for him?
Yes, exactly. Future Flash there is going to have to be expanding the cabinet just a little bit. Really, really good stuff. He is your champion for iOS. Let's take a look at the bracket and what you guys have witnessed here today. And of course, don't go anywhere because we're only halfway through the show. But Future Flash defeating Nilo 2-0, although the circumstances for that second track were incredible. It should really have gone to a third. And then we have Alex defeating Fra 2-1. In the third place match, Nilo came good. And actually, if I have to say, the most convincing result of the day was probably Nilo's win over Fra. And then what an incredible grand final. With Alex up 2-0, Future Flash completes the reverse sweep and makes it 3-2.
Yeah, do you know, it was great to see Farah again, because he has tried qualifying in the past, not for every season, but an odd season here and there. And it's nice to see him back. He's, like I said, a strong contender. He put on a good show in the end. It didn't go his way in the third place playoff match. Nilo, I'm very excited to see what he could do, especially next season, to see what he can bring to the table, because he's, again, one of those drivers who have that special ability to be able to close the gap and knows what to do in you know, a bad to worse situation. So he's definitely on the lines of Alex and Flash's level, 100%. It's just like to see him show a bit more in a tournament setting. But like, we've seen quite good stuff from him. It could have been a completely different story if he actually didn't fail on that second track in that best of three in the first semi-final. But these things happen. I'm sure they'll have plenty more chances in the future.
What we clearly need is a show match where it's 100 laps and we just invite all of them. I'd watch the hell out of that.
I probably would as well. I was talking about best of 11. You're talking about 100 laps. That's, I'll probably go with the 100 lap method.
Go with 100 laps. I mean, give everyone the chance to crash out. My worry is that by the end of lap 80, we might only start to see these minor mistakes coming in from Future Flash. We didn't really see the big blowout moment from him today, did we? If we're being honest, we saw at least one of those from every other driver.
Yeah, we didn't really see much at all. Like, this is a mammoth difference in comparison to what we saw last season. We know he had a few issues last season, not in terms of playing, but like, I think in terms of the device or something. But this time around, he seems clean, proper, confident, you know, the Future Flash we know and love. And that's exactly what we got. And that's why, you know, he's the champion. Like, when you've got that much confidence in yourself, you know, what do you expect? You know, just goes from a 2-0 deficit to 3-2. You can't really complain there. And put on a great show, of course.
And a huge thank you as well, of course, to Snapdragon, the primary sponsor of the Snapdragon Pro Series. Absolutely phenomenal stuff that we're able to put this show on for you here. You were talking a little bit as well about how Future Flash had some issues with previous devices. Stuff like the processors in mobile phones. You wouldn't think it, but they genuinely do make all the difference. Like, there's a difference between any old nice phone that you can web browse on and something that you actually want to use in a competitive gaming environment, and a lot more so than on desktop computers. On mobiles, those extra frames are so much harder to come by. You can't just chuck a load of cooling and a massive graphics card in there and off you go. There's limited space you have to play with. So all of these frames, they add up and they give you a competitive edge. They really do.
Yeah, no, honestly, they do 100%. Like, it's like when you jump from on a PC to 60 to 144 frames. Like, when you first witness the difference, you're like, oh my God, like, you know, it's so much cleaner, smoother.
Yep.
You can hit your shots a lot better, or, you know, especially on games like Asphalt as well. Like, when you're racing at that accolade as well, like, in terms of like the performance you got to do, the speed, the agility, everything you need to, especially in Nitro, you need something which is going to be as clean as possible. And like I said to anyone watching, don't knock it till you try it.
Yes, it's the higher frame rate experience is something that I think desktop computers have started getting for a while now, like the last 3 to 5 years, and it's only now becoming mainstream on mobile, and we're slowly but surely getting there. And the difference really is phenomenal. Like, I'm used to sort of 1080 30 kind of resolutions, and the kind of speeds we're getting on mobile phones now are actually staggering, like how smooth transitions can be when it comes to moving video. And it's obviously literally the most important environment when you're playing a game, especially if there's money on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, the frame jump as well is just ridiculous, and that's why I say don't knock it till you try it, because some people will just go, 100%. Oh, there's really too much difference. But honestly, with how clean it is and how smooth the performance is, especially on a handheld device, it does make all the difference. It does help improve your game as well to a massive degree, and that's why I say, you know, some people will just go, oh, it's just a stat, whatever, but it's a very important stat, one of the biggest stats as well. And honestly, you should definitely try it for yourself at home.
So that is the end of the iOS portion of our bracket today. An absolutely delightful result for Future Flash, who completes the reverse sweep over Alex and wins the grand finals of 3-2. We're going to go for a short break now, but when we come back, we've got the Android segment of the hour. We do this all over again. See you in a bit.
The Snapdragon Pro Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming and Monster Energy.
My name is Miłosz. I go in game as Jagermeister, and I'm gonna be one of the 4 finalists for the.
We clear?
On the first
Shouldn't we are?
season
I'm
of
gonna quickly go for
Series, I came out as a winner, so I hope I'm gonna be able to actually take the trophy once again. Although on the previous tournament from different edition, I didn't even come to top 2, especially when I'm gonna be worried because one of the finalists is Zuchti, which came out on higher position than me, so this is gonna be more interesting. Basing on what I've seen from the American version of Snapdragon series, I can honestly expect anything, but I'm gonna stay positive and hopefully I can come out as a winner once again. So my expectation is at least I would love to finish in top 2. So basically I would want to win the battle in the semi-finals. I will be even happier to actually win this once again, but I will be happy if I finish at least in 2nd place. Honestly, I feel excited to play against anyone because my first opponent is going to be totally not David, which he's totally new to the ESL stage, and I'm curious to see how good he actually is. Is it going to be nerve-wracking for him, or he will come out well out of this? I'm very curious to see. And on 2nd bracket, there's Onyo and Zuchti, which I had the opportunity to play against both in the past, and both are incredibly good players. I'm curious who's going to make through to the final stage. I'm just gonna carry on playing and hoping there's gonna be more tournaments because I'd love to participate in them. I hope you guys are gonna have a good time during this tournament. Hopefully everyone will have a GG's, and yeah, I wish you best of luck in the tournament. Just want to say thank you for everyone who's gonna support me throughout this tournament, and I'm definitely gonna see you someday back on YouTube.
Welcome back, everybody. We have just finished the iOS half of today's broadcast. We're now going to be moving on to Android. You are, of course, watching the Snapdragon Pro Series. We're playing Asphalt 9. I'm Jagermeister. With me is Lethal, and we have had a really fun set of storylines being woven together for iOS, including who's going to make the bigger mistake, how the better line always wins, except when it doesn't, and Future Flash catches back up to you inexplicably. And then we had a reverse sweep in the grand finals as well. It feels like, Harry, we've had a bit of everything.
Yeah, you know, we had a bit of everything with a mixture of a wide variety of different tracks as well, which is nice to see. And yeah, Future Flash put on a outstanding, incredible performance. But that's the iOS side. We saw how stacked that was. And going to the Android side now, the players I'm sure people have known and seen before in the past, and it's going to be very exciting itself. SwitchD as well, nice to see him in the fray, and he'll be playing as Onyo to start off with. And we've got Toti, not David. I think we have seen David once before. I can't remember from the top of my head, but
I feel like we have.
The name rings a bell. It definitely rings a bell. But Jagermeister, of course, definitely rings a bell. He's definitely won a few of these here, John.
He certainly has. I mean, if we were very reluctant, shall we say, to necessarily pick up any favorites going into iOS. But for me, when I'm looking at this bracket, if I blinked and saw Onyo Jagermeister in the final, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. They've obviously still got quite a long way to go. They still have to win their semi-final, but I feel like that would almost be a replay.
Well, Onyo is basically the Android version of Alex. Like, for example, the last 3 seasons in a row on the Snapdragon Pro Series, he's placed second. And before that, I think it was in the Asphalt Series 2 years ago, placed second. Number 2 seems to be his favourite number. I don't know if that's going to change, but on the other side of things, Jagermeister, he's won the last 2 seasons of the Snapdragon Pro Series. So it depends if he's going to go for 3 times in a row. Is Onyo going to bag his full second in a row? Yeah, exactly. Like, we always see this Onyo Jagermeister kind of battle every time. So, but will SwitchD or David be able to capitalize or be able to make a statement and make a name for themselves? We'll have to see. Exactly right. And don't forget, it's not just about this bracket and who's actually going to end up taking the spoils. We've also got some prize money as well on the line, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But let's take a look now at our first matchup. We talked about Onyo and Jagermeister. We've got SwitchD in the mix now as well. And like you say, Harry, extremely strong driver. Maybe we see him in these sort of finals a little bit less often, but no one should really underestimate him. Absolutely not. 1200 per second there between the two to try and bag that first seed. SwitchD is actually the one who does bag it in the end. And for Onyo, though, this is going to be another true testament for him to see what he can do in order to try and topple SwitchD here. It's like I said before, a lot of people will assume or, you know, make a recollection that it will probably be an Onyo Jagermeister final. But in a best-of-3 format, it's not always like that, just due to the fact we're best-of-3. Anything can happen. If it was a best-of-5 or best-of-7, I would probably put it more in favour of Onyo. But for SwitchD, I've not seen him play a huge amount or a lot, and I'm not too sure what he can bring to the table. Remember, it's been, you know, a good 5 or 6 months since we've seen Onyo play last season, so we're going to see if he's still as consistent as ever and still as refined as ever as well. And SwitchD, you know, if he's able to come in here as number 1 seed and be able to take the first qualifier, then who knows what he can do in the 1v1 format. Well, let's remind ourselves what we're actually going to be playing for here. So SwitchD, we might be a little less familiar with what his performance is going to be in the grand finals, but I'll tell you what, this is going to be pretty useful motivation. $1,200 if he's able to make it through the semi-final and grand final, then goes down to $700, $400, and $200. So all 4 of the players here today will be walking home with something. And if that isn't motivation for SwitchD, I don't know what is. This is what we're going to be racing on as well. So we have Streets of San Francisco, Cliffhanger, and then Starting Grid only if we require a 3rd track. And it's worth reiterating this, Lethal, because the way the players got here, right? The time trials. You can be practicing that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times until you get the perfect time. You're topping the leaderboards. That's great. You've made it here. This is a different format. This is one-on-one now. It's a completely different ballgame. It certainly is indeed, and especially on maps like Cliffhanger and Starting Grid, probably obviously more Cliffhanger. I did say it's like where some of the good players come to die here, and we've seen that a couple of times as well. Nilo sadly being one of them earlier on, and yeah, like don't get me wrong, Cliffhanger is not as risky compared to some of the other tracks on Himalayas, but it's still one of those tracks you've got to be very wary of, and you've got to have a high level of caution, especially with what your opponent's up to within that a few tenths of a second. If he's behind you on the side, expect some kind of shenanigans. But we've seen some great driving from the iOS side. I expect exactly the same from the Android side. But what I want to see from a lot of these players on the Android side, especially from David and Suchti, I want to see how good their base driving is overall. So their refinement around some of these corners, the lines they take, their nitro consumption, how good they are with the speed tricks, where they use a lot of brake nitro if they falling behind. But in terms of predictions and how this is going to pan out, I'm not sure what you think. I'm just going to play it super safe, like mega safe, and just say Onyo. Suchti could come out swinging, don't get me wrong, but I'm just going to go with the Onyo show for now.
I think I'm inclined to agree with you, because when I'm thinking about the driving styles and how consistency makes it into a grand final, I'm going on a scale of 1 to Alex. Oh wait, Onyo's there as well, and that's making me think that is the safe bet. But also, consistent excellence sometimes looks boring. I don't think Onyo is going to give us a boring race at all, but actually the best possible drivers can make it look boring, and it's possible he does that here. We'll wait and see.
No one likes boring, mate, but I'm pretty sure that this well, yeah, I like clean driving, but I like a little bit of flair
spice
on the server.
Yeah, why not? And already we have a little bit of sideways action there, as Onyo gets barged out of the way. So Suchti coming out of the gates properly swinging here. I like it.
This is the problem you see when you're on the outside lane on this track in particular. If you get a few digs, you're definitely going to go off course and lose that speed and momentum going into the next section of this track. But Suchti now, though, isn't going to have the shockwave which he really needed, but instead is going to perfect nitro up anyway. But Onyo actually managed to get the shockwave. Is he going to 360? No, he doesn't actually take the risk in the end, which is interesting in itself. So goes for the single nitro as Suchti now switching back to him. He's got a perfect nitro around this next corner. So we're seeing different ways of using the shockwave here. Normally, most people will use the shockwave twice up both jumps and then maybe 360 afterwards to get a little bit more nitro, but we're not really seeing a lot of that. As Suchti now, maybe because he didn't have enough nitro at the time and due to the shenanigans at the beginning, he didn't have the nitro he needed. But end of the day, he's the one in the lead. He's one looking very sharp at the moment and looking very strong to take this first track.
And this gap at the moment, I have to say, is considerable. We're on board now with Onyo, and I think the gap was just over half a second before. I'm pretty confident it's grown since we last checked in with Onyo as well. And that just goes to show how rapid Suchti actually is here. Like, we were always thinking Suchti is the joker in the pack and that he might pull off the first track victory, but I don't think either of us could have guessed that it would be by this sort of margin.
No, there's been a lot of mistakes from both these players, but Suchti's been the one who seems more refined in comparison. He's just single nitroing down this bridge into the perfect nitro. Going to get around this next corner momentarily to seal the deal and finish off this first track after going through this bridge. Just needs the single into the perfect now to keep his line straight. Gets a little bit of a wall ride there from that last jump onto the bridge. As now double nitros over the next jump, over the finish line shortly, and there we have it. Clean, comfortable, concise, and that's exactly what I said at the beginning. What I want to see from Suchti is some incredible base level driving outside the whole, nitro and all the speed tricks, and we saw exactly that and a little bit more. But there was mistakes from both sides, in all fairness.
That was impressive. Let's take a look at a couple of moments then from that race. But Suchti has shown us he is here to play. He is here to stay. And, well, that really... I feel like that puts a lot of psychological damage going in the way of Onyo right now, because if he's coming into this going, I'm supposed to be the quick, consistent guy with the basics that are out of this world, and Suchti's gone on and said, actually, I think anything you can do, I can do better. That is a big, big mental one-up going on to track number 2.
It was funny because at the very beginning, you could see Onyo trying to get more into the middle of the track right at the very beginning so that Suchti couldn't drift and be able to collide with Onyo at the same time. He tried to keep as straight as possible, but Suchti goes, no, inside's mine. I don't know why you're even trying to attempt it at all. But that's what happens. But it's like I said, there was a few mistakes. We didn't see the 2 shockwave bounce into the 360 off the on the high end of the track, just to at least be able to increase the amount of nitro there. There was a lot of bits and pieces here and there which they could have done in order to be able to gain more nitro, gain more momentum and speed, and be able to put a lot of pressure onto Suchti. But Suchti in the end, though, is going to be the one who takes that first track. Very impressive from what we saw there. We know that both players did make a lot of mistakes throughout there. I wouldn't just say just mistakes. It's just there was some parts of the track where they could have consumed a lot more nitro, but it doesn't matter. It could just be playing safe. Yeah, it definitely optimization there, but definitely played it a lot more safe just to secure that victory.
But you know what, though? Even through those minor mistakes, even through playing it safe and stuff like that, Suchti just looked smooth. It wasn't so much it was a lack of a mistake, but the line didn't look great, or there wasn't that much you could openly criticize, if at all. It really was just little imperfections here and there. And for someone to come and do that to Onyo is mega impressive.
It certainly is, yeah. This is what I'm talking about. I've heard of this player, but I've not seen him compete a lot, from over the years of Asphalt 9. And yeah, and what we've seen so far is incredible. The things I always like to see is not really much about the speed tricks and, because most people's strategies and the speed tricks they use to get around some of these ramps or some of these barrels as well, but it's quite consistent across the board. But it's just the base level driving I like to see. And from what we're seeing so far, it does look incredible. It does look very solid, very good. Is it up to Jagermeister's level? It could be, depends on the circumstances here. But this is still only a best of 3.
It might have to be soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so for his sake, just to give him a bit more of a challenge, so to speak. But I don't think this is the last of Onyo so far. I still think he can definitely turn this around.
So will we be going on to a track number 3? I hope so. I always want to see the decider. We got a treat there with the previous grand finals. I would like to see our semifinals and grand final on the Android side also serve up some absolutely delicious best of 3s and a best of 5. So going into the next track, we're on to Cliffhanger here. How are we feeling about Cliffhanger? Do we think this might show a potential chink in the armor?
It certainly could do. It's as we mentioned earlier, like with Cliffhangers on this map in particular, there's a lot of high-risk, high-reward plays you can make. So for Onyo here, if he does trail behind a little bit, it's not really too much trouble or cause for concern for him, considering that this is one problem. So he needs to put the pressure onto Suchti here. If he's like half a second behind to a second behind, you're forcing your opponent, who's currently in first place, to not play safe. And Onyo here already going straight for that next jump, and Suchti instead goes for the other one due to the circumstances he was placed in there. Nice use of the double nitro. He used the shockwave to go on the higher ground instead, and Onyo doing the exact same thing, using the single to go for the next canister, and now going around this next bend.
And Onyo now, unfortunately, for the second time in a row, finds himself having to play catch-up. Let's see what he can do this time around. I have to say, Suchti's advantage at the moment is looking really solid, in excess of half a second already.
Certainly does indeed, as he's using that double nitro to get that gold canister up to get ready for this next shockwave, which he has done, and will get a little bit more time and speed from that, as he's using a double nitro to finish Van off. Onyo is still directly behind him, mind you, and he knows this, and he knows that he has no way to play this safe, especially by only being half a second behind, as Onyo uses that single nitro to get around this next corner into the perfect. And remember, this is only the first lap here, so still time for Onyo to try and make a difference. He did go up this last jump, which the likes of Suchti did not, so another way to close the gap a little bit more, but Suchti's still playing incredibly well.
So we see Suchti was very close there to not deciding whether he was going to go left or right, but just about scrapes it in by the skin of his teeth. Suchti shockwaving through this section of the track. Looks a little bit strange when we go through there at speed, but he does safely make it down on the other side. And Onyo is just nowhere to be found. I have to say, the gap's just getting bigger. This is so impressive.
It certainly is indeed. And Onyo is just doing whatever he can. Oh, he didn't barrel roll off, sadly. So it's going to cost him some nitro there, as he now has to drift a little bit more in order to get that shockwave across to this next jump here. And then in the end, though, Onyo not really too far off, as Suchti here not too far off the finish line himself, using a single into the perfect. He's going to get that gold canister. I assume he's not going to take this last jump, considering what we've seen in the past. No, he is not. Decides to prioritise the gold canister instead. Perfect over the line. And there we have it. Onyo makes it over straight after. It's a few seconds behind, but that was a big margin there. Just under 4 seconds and no crashes involved. CEST looking pretty damn solid.
I think if you're in the other semi-final and you're taking a look at that right now, you're looking at what CEST just did and you're going, ooh, I think I need to be a little bit worried here, because that was a brilliant performance. Let's check out a couple of the moments from that race and how Onyo tried but couldn't actually make it back to contend with CEST there. Really, really well driven.
It certainly was indeed. And yeah, he seems to have every piece of the puzzle here. There was just a few moments for CEST I kind of felt like could have been improved in terms of how and when to use certain parts of the nitro. Like you saw, he went through a couple of canisters at the start of the second lap when he could have, you know, maybe used a perfect or shockwave, braked a bit, drifted a bit, going to the left-hand side lane, and then done it again. Now, there's a few moments where he could have saved a little bit more time, but it's like we mentioned before, when you're in first place by at least a second, you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you don't need to go out your comfort zone. This is why, as your opponent, you need to be within that half-second gap to tell your opponent, I'm directly behind you, you can't play this safe at all in the slightest. And he was feeling like that less and less as the gap widened over time.
Really impressive stuff. So CEST there winning, doing a phenomenal job and making sure he takes the semi-final 2-0. That was a 2-minute 13.731. And well, I was on, like, I'm going to hold my hands up. I was on the Onyo bandwagon. I know how good a driver he is, but CEST has come in with a bang. He's the joker in the pack that properly sent everybody else stumbling. And he is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the grand final.
Well, there's a clear reason why he won the first qualifier, considering what we saw. Yeah. That was incredible. But I do feel like there's a lot of minor mistakes which could be capitalized on by Jagermeister. That's the only issue I currently have. Or it could be the fact that CEST played so safe, but it didn't really like go forward like in terms of like making those mistakes. So I'll be interested to see how that matchup unfolds. But of course, we're probably going a bit too ahead of ourselves. Well, I am especially. But for David versus Jagermeister, it should be another great semi-final.
Fantastic stuff. And that means, of course, we're going to be moving on to our second semi-final shortly. A huge thank you once again to Snapdragon for helping us put on the tournament and for providing the equipment that allows so many of our competitors to basically just get more frames from their device and hopefully win more of these rounds and give us more of this fantastic, entertaining action in the Snapdragon Pro Series. So that is it for the first semi-final. That went by a lot quicker than I thought it would, Harry. And very impressive for CEST. He's properly thrown down the gauntlet here.
Yeah, I want to see what he's like when he's put under pressure. We didn't really see much of that, as Onyo did try. Like, he took a few risks in order to get a bit more nitro. Did not work, sadly, for him. But for Jagermeister, when I see him or David put the pressure onto him on the final, that's when I want to see how much CEST changes as a player. Like, if he's going to be as consistent as usual, does he make more mistakes when he's trying to add a bit more nitro into the canister? You know, there's a lot of things here, but we haven't seen that yet. But when he gets when push comes to shove, when his back is against the wall, I'm sure we'll witness that. But before we get to that though, I want to see how David does as well, especially against Jagermeister. If he does defeat him, then that's just an upset in itself. But it's like we mentioned earlier, we've seen David's name crop up a few times in the past.
Well, let's take a look at the bracket and where things currently stand after that first semi-final. You can see CEST there taking out Onyo in very impressive fashion, 2-0. And now we're going to be moving on to David versus Jagermeister. This is going to be an absolutely delightful best of three. But from historical results, I think the pun is very much intended there. And I think Jagermeister has got to start this best of three as some sort of favorite, right?
Absolutely. He's won 2 seasons in a row, and the season before that he placed 3rd. So he's had some very, very solid placements overall and over the space of time. And we're just looking at one of the qualifiers here. So in the 3rd qualifier on the Freedom Route in Scotland, you can see that barely. Jagermeister won by 21 tenths of a second. So, sorry, 2 tenths of a second. So not really too shabby from him. David not really too far behind either. But this is, you know, a lot of people will say it's a tall order. You know, this man's an absolute tank on the server, no matter who he plays up against. He seems to be very solid in terms of his driving, his consistency with his refinement on a lot of these tracks. And no one's really properly challenged him apart from Onio in the past. And I'd love to see David really be a real threat or a real ace in the hole to somehow be that threat. If not, though, 60, I'm sure will put on a good performance no matter who he's up against between these two.
I think that's almost the problem, isn't it? Because a lot of the things you were talking about, consistency and just being able to be quick no matter who you're playing up against, I would honestly have said about Onio as well. And then look how quickly he got dispatched in the first semi-final. So I am absolutely hopeful for David to take the game properly to Jagermeister and say, I deserve a spot in the grand finals. What a story that would be.
It really would be indeed, and with tracks like this, it certainly can do. It's the only thing that Jagermeister needs to be a bit careful with is cliffhanger once again. But from what we've seen so far, every player has been playing out their minds on the streets of San Francisco. There's been a couple of different strategies which people use with the shockwave, going up onto the high ground on a huge slope. I'm surprised that the two players in the last matchup didn't 360 off the second jump, but it's like I said before, like maybe they're too worried about the risk factor it could cause. Like even though you may gain that extra nitro, you won't have the speed to back that up. So we'll have to see what these two players have in store for us here. But yeah, it's always the cliffhanger, mate. Always the cliffhanger. This is always the one where, you know, I'm not really too sure what on earth is going to happen. But it's a shame we haven't seen much of starting grid either, because it is a very good track on Auckland, and it's something which can separate the men from the boys sometimes.
It can be a lot of fun indeed. And of course, if we get to a 1-1 situation, our decider will be on starting grid in Auckland. So there is every possibility of us doing that. Now, there's a small matter of predictions. I got it completely wrong last time, but I still think I'm going to stick with the same terminology. Based on history alone, it's so difficult to bet against Jagermeister here. I would love to see David win, but I feel like Jagermeister's got the chips in his corner.
Absolutely. I'm going to totally agree. Sorry. Basically, with Jagermeister, it's more of a 70-30, not like a 55-45 kind of factor we saw in the past. Right. I'm mainly going by this because we haven't seen a lot of David in the past. I haven't seen much of David myself, but it could be something like 60, where it just come out of the woodwork, you know, guns blazing and literally just absolutely destroying him. But sure, I can't see that happening considering the stature and the consistency that Jagermeister has shown and performed in the past.
So let's find out then. Is David going to take it to Goliath? It's track number 1. We head to San Francisco. On board now with Jagermeister. Hasn't got the inside line, but manages to make it ahead.
He certainly does indeed, but at least at the start of that track, he can push himself into the middle to force himself that inside, and I think you can see Nitro a little bit in order to be able to guarantee that. So as they give him a nice early lead here, David not really too far behind, shockwaveing across, as Jagermeister now is going to be shockwaveing again through this next section underneath the bridge. Just playing it safe and secure, making sure he gets that shockwave before he heads into this next jump, which he has done beautifully done there. As he's going across 360s across the next bend and pauses just at the right time to double nitro and to keep up the speed and the momentum there. Perfect nitro as we go across, but David is right up his backside here.
Love this. So we saw the 360 here that we maybe didn't see quite as much of. David taking a line that's less tight, actually, although he did manage to close the gap up to that point. So maybe he's got a trick or two up his sleeve, using the wall ride there just a little bit. But Jagermeister now starting to squeeze out that advantage a little more. David was a little closer 10-15 seconds ago.
Certainly wasn't in. David now just drifting a tad just to save up for that shockwave in his savings, and now going for the perfect nitro once again. Probably used a double here just to use for that turning capacity to go across this next jump. He may just be able to make it. Yes, he does. A little bit of a slip up there, but thank God that was a double nitro. So if it was a perfect or a shockwave, John, he would have been way off the mark on that next portion. Oh, absolutely.
So here we go, back up to the ramp there. Absolutely delightful stuff there from Jagermeister, opting not to go for the 360 afterwards, but he is comfortably in the lead now, holding on to about, I'd say, half a second, maybe just over half a second. David looked like he was going to close it down, but Jagermeister seems to have responded.
Yeah, you can see here Jagermeister sacrifice a little bit more speed so he can drift out of it and basically use the shockwave a little bit quicker. And he's not going for the wall ride either. As you rightly mentioned as well, John, that he didn't use the 360 either. I'm on top of the slope earlier on, which is perfectly understandable. He's got a good enough lead to play this safe and secure the finish. But in the end, though, still very impressed by how David performed. A 3-second gap, sadly. But this is Jagermeister we're talking about. This is how we kind of predicted it. But I did like the refinement on how they used the nitro on the slopes compared to the other semi-final.
That gap was half a second at the end of lap number 1 and 3 seconds at the end of lap number 2. Jagermeister just turning it on. It feels like he can turn it on and off at will. If that's the case and he's not even feeling under pressure, it's going to be so difficult to see how he gets beat on track number 2. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look at a couple of those moments from the race just gone as the drivers set themselves up for the next round.
Yeah, we certainly do. And it was definitely the very beginning. When you start on the outside on this one, it gives you room to like sacrifice yourself to pushing yourself into the middle and then grab the inside straight afterwards. And you saw that Jagermeister guaranteed that by using the double nitro right at the very beginning. And Jagermeister, you could see that he did use the 360 on the first lap of the high slope just so that he can make sure he can play it safe. In the second lap, it went well. It went fine. He broke in an appropriate manner. He was able to double nitro off it straight afterwards to not lose too much speed. So it was just incredible stuff and textbook stuff from Jagermeister.
What do you do now if you're David, knowing you have to win the next 2 in a row? I mean, when Jagermeister isn't making those specific mistakes, where are the risks you're going to be taking? At least we're moving on to cliffhanger, right? But look at this. Jagermeister, 207.965. That was pretty solid from him, and you need to do quite a lot to break down pretty solid.
If it was me, I would probably be thinking of what I could do at the start to play a little bit dirty if there's this much of a gap. And I know that not many people probably would like that because they want to be as clean as possible. But I honestly would. If I knew there was that much of a skill gap between me and my opponent, I would say, right, a few digs at the start is what I'm going to have to do and then just play it consistently afterwards. If not, if you do miss out on the opportunity, you're going to have to break nitro trick for days until to the finish line in order to be able to improve that. But on a map like this, it's going to be very tough and very difficult. You can easily mishandle your vehicle if you do that at certain costs. Jagermeister is going to be looking to probably do the same thing depending on the lane he's going to be starting in. And it also depends what routes they take as well. It's going to be debatable what they're going to do because we've seen a lot of these players in the past take numerous different routes, which is being quite interesting in itself considering the circumstances. You thought everyone would have refined track that much now, but everyone will be taking the same route and know what's quicker. But yeah, going to the second track, Jagermeister should be able to take this, but don't be surprised if David plays a little bit dirty at the beginning.
And having the different routes as well just gives us that little bit more variety. It's good to see that the drivers who are this quick are still disagreeing over what might be absolutely quickest. So here we go, cliffhanger. It all comes down to this for David, but we've seen turnarounds here before.
Certainly have done indeed, as both players using that double nitro at the very beginning. Jagermeister with the tiniest of edges here, and it looks like neither player bashed into each other, but David does get the early start. And that's great stuff from David. And this is the lead he exactly needed here. Does have the shockwave. Jagermeister knows that David's also very consistent. So it's all about how he's going to overtake him. And now we're going to witness how Jagermeister can deal with this pressure.
The tiniest of margins here for David. That landing allows Jagermeister just a tiniest bit more speed from behind, but not enough to capitalize on. Both of them there. I think David maybe got the tiniest bit more air time and has started to squeeze out a couple of extra car lengths. But honestly, this gap, nothing to write home about yet.
No, not at all. Jagermeister was actually wall riding a little bit earlier. Nice little jump there to try and help him out to shockwave off this next jump. He should have to catch up to David a little bit. But as I said that, though, David was able to get more airtime from that barrel roll. So he should be able to use that the perfect nitro quite soon, which he has done. So far, Jagermeister so close behind him. Both of them are going to risk going up that barrel roll, up that next jump. Perfectly done. Jagermeister still on his tail, known and telling David, but I'm still directly behind you. Could have landed on top of him, but instead using the shockwave to go up both of these jumps, which we've not seen any of the players do yet today, which was a little bit unheard of. And now David is going to be the one trailing behind and have to pull something special here to overtake Jagermeister.
Very, very interesting stuff here on lap number 2. Jagermeister going for both of those jumps and actually relegating David into second place. David now needs the overtake before the end of this lap if he's to survive and keep his chances of going into the grand final alive.
Certainly has done, and now using that double nitro to go up this next bend, and still Jagermeister just increases lead about a tenth of a second every time. Manages to be able to stand his ground. My God, that would have been one way to crash on out after all that. But look at this, though, it's actually directly behind him still, using that perfect nitro, just delaying it a tad now to get around this next corner, as David will have to go over this next jump depending on how much nitro he has left in the tank. But it looks like Jagermeister's going to be perfectly fine. He's not risking it at all. He knew he was high enough and fast enough in order to not go over the next jump and just prioritize the gold canister. And there we have it, a closer affair compared to the last game. 1.15 seconds was the time difference in comparison. And sadly, David will be knocked out. But in the end, I've been very impressed by what he's been able to do.
Especially on that second track, David really brought it super close to Jagermeister, forcing Jagermeister to take some risks in order to retake the position. Unfortunately, when you ask Jagermeister to do things like that, he just goes, oh, okay then, and he goes and does it. So, to be fair, that was brilliantly executed. Let's take a look at some of the moments from that race. David was ahead in the beginning. Jagermeister had to overtake to get the 2-0. Very, very interesting stuff.
It certainly was indeed, and great job from Jagermeister to pile on the pressure, because David felt uncomfortable and he knew that he couldn't play it safe at all in the slightest. Sadly for Jagermeister, at the very beginning of his first lap, as you can see, David was able to get the inside a little bit more, so he was able to get the jump first and get a little bit more airtime. But at the start of the second lap, this was the game changer for everyone watching. The fact that he was able to abuse both jumps, use the shockwave at the same time to be able to consistently use that shockwave, was a mammoth difference in comparison. And for David, because he missed that first jump, maybe due to the fact that he wanted to play it a little bit safer, it costed him the lead, and it also cost him pushing into track number 3 in that best of 3.
And when you're behind, of course, you have the option of seeing what your opponent is doing and realizing this is actually going to work. Because Jagermeister went from, what, a third of a second behind to a full half a second ahead off that one move alone. That was a huge difference maker. We're not talking like car length inches or anything like that. We're talking a huge difference maker. People are going to be looking at that going, oh, so that's what I have to do when I'm in a position right behind. So that was almost textbook.
It certainly was indeed. And look at that, though. 212.432. Very strong showing from Jagermeister, and we'll be seeing him in the final against CEST. Probably a final which we didn't anticipate, but I think it's going to be even more exciting, though, because now we're going to see a new contender against Jagermeister, and we're going to see if Jager can maybe try and win 3 times in a row, 3 times the charm, maybe, could be. We'll have to see how that goes. But Onio versus David in a third place playoff, I think it's also going to be a very good showing from what we saw from David.
I think so. David might be giving Onio a big run for his money here, and Onio, unfortunately, fading a little bit against CEST, but quite often when you come off the back of a loss like that, especially when you're as experienced as Onio, in all sorts of esports, it tends to galvanize you a little bit and makes you wake up. It's very rare for super experienced players to then go into a spiral of continuing to go down to other opponents like that. So maybe we'll see a little bit of an Onio revival, and David could well be surprised by that based on what he saw in the first semi-final.
Yeah, consider what we saw in the first one compared to this one. I'll be interested to see how David's now going to perform against someone who's, I wouldn't say a weaker contender, because Onio still played quite well, but just in comparison now, he'll probably feel like he has room to try and do something here.
So I'm looking forward to seeing which of them will come out on top. Huge thank you to Monster Energy for sponsoring and helping us put on the Snapdragon Pro Series for you guys. We spoke a little bit about this earlier, our favorite flavors of Monster. But I'm actually wanting to change the tack a little bit. I know exactly what my favorite flavors are. I'm going for the Rossies. I'm going for the Silver Ultras, 100%.
Oh, you've changed now, have you?
No. Same ones as before.
Oh,
but I'm changing tack because you've given me some ideas for flavors I could try that I haven't yet, because I haven't tried all of the fruit flavors yet. And I absolutely adore mango. I can't believe I haven't tried your favorites.
Well, the Mango Loco, oh, mate.
Absolutely.
I
actually haven't tried the Mango Loco.
Oh, mate, I'm going to have to come and see. I'm going to have to just get a crate round and just bring it to him.
We don't live that far from it. We could literally have like a streamed gaming session after like later tonight or tomorrow. We live quite close to each other, surprisingly.
Yeah, that's true. So I could actually do that for you.
We could do that, so that'd be great. Might be awake for a while, but as long as we have some good gaming going, who even even cares. That would be fantastic. What a great way to spend an evening or weekend. But we need to get back on track here. We've got a best of 3 coming up. It is the 3rd place decider. And as you can see here, it is Onyo versus David. A little bit, maybe this isn't the 3rd place match we were expecting, but based on what I've seen today, I think it's going to be really close.
Yeah, I think it will be as well. I feel like Onyo will have an edge, but it depends how David is going to perform. Like, I'm surprised that he didn't go over both jumps on that last lap. And so obviously, I don't know if it's because he's a bit unaware on how close behind Jagermeister was. But for Onyo now, though, try and guarantee that 3rd place. Of course, you know, in terms of prize pool, goes $1,200, $700, $400, then $200 perspective. So this is literally double your money if you win this 3rd place playoff. And as you can see, the Freedom Route of Scotland, they also played in the 3rd qualifier and just under 0.2 of a second here, John.
Interesting. Yeah, David slightly faster than Onyo here. But remember, this is time trial. This is not a head-to-head format. So while this is indicative of how quick they can be, we don't necessarily know how they're going to perform under pressure in that same sort of environment. And we've also got different tracks as well that these drivers are going to be racing on in the 3rd place decider. So they're different from the semifinals we've seen so far. We're going to be starting off in Wildlands, and we're then moving on to Long Run and finishing off, if we need to, with a 3rd track on Moat Finale. So Lethal, talk to me about these 3 tracks and what you think.
Just give us Moat Finale, like literally we haven't seen
Just
that yet today.
Times.
Yeah, I know. Like, literally, this is the only track we haven't witnessed yet unfold between 2 of the competitors, and this would be a great time to see it. But look at track so far; it's like quite milestone, quite consistent. Obviously, Wildlands isn't really too risky compared to some of the other maps on some of the other tracks on Scotland. Nevada for Long Run, very spacious track. Normally, it's the people who are the most refined and that got the best lines of consistency there across the board. Not really too much about your nitro management and the tricks you can do. It's just all about your base driving skills, really. And I want to see Moat Finale just to see exactly what shenanigans they get up to, because they're going to be bishing and bashing literally at the start like no end. I want to see exactly how these 2 are going to come out on top and try and take this 3rd place. But yeah, we've got some great tracks to finish this top 3 off.
So in short, yes, we can demonstrate some important base driving skills. We can take a look at some of the finesse. Just skip to Mode Finale. We want to see the bish bash bosh. Let's be honest. That's what the crowd want to see.
Exactly. We don't ask for much, do we? Like, listen, it's literally the only track we've not seen yet, and it's one I like as well. So please, just skip to track 3. Why not?
So these are the tracks, of course, our drivers are going to be racing on. You feeling slight edge for Onyo? Now's a chance to change your prediction if you want to.
No, don't do that, because I'll change it. And Onyo's going to win, and I'm going to be like, why, John? Why? I don't know. I'm still going to say Onyo 60-40. I think what we saw from David was good, but because Jagermeister was so good, it is quite hard to kind of compare. But I feel like as long as Onyo isn't really too disappointed about his last performance, keeps his head in the game and take this 3rd place, at least it's like a spot on the podium. Should be fine. Should be okay. Double your money. You'll be happy. Okay, you didn't get a final spot, but at least you're in the top 3.
I'm going to be controversial here and go with David, because I think the mistake in the 2nd track of that last semi-final was down to him not realizing fully, not appreciating how close his opponent was to him. And I think it was a careless mistake. I don't think he's going to repeat it. And therefore, I reckon he's going to have the edge.
I seem to be pretty damn awful at predicting 3rd place playoffs, so you could be right. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm just playing it safe at this stage. But going here, though, onto Scotland, onto Wildlands here, Onyo does have a slight early lead here, but David's able to shockwave just across to get a little bit of an edge in terms of the position he was in. But Onyo's also overtaken once again here, using that double nitro to get across, both using the 360 to gain a little bit more nitro to add for that perfect nitro straight afterwards. Decide not to go for the barrel roll jump, just goes to go for the straight jump instead, and using the 360 to get a little bit more, whilst using that double nitro. 360 a little bit more than he would like, as now the shockwave also comes out for David. Neck and neck, as both players have overtaken each other at least twice.
This is close as you like. Definitely the closest first half of lap 1 we have seen today. Not really much in the way of major mistakes from both players. And that was big. David forcing Onyo down low. Let's see what that does as they reconvene and get back onto the same piece of tarmac.
Sadly for David, though, it did cost a bit of time, but he did get a little bit more nitro from the airtime anyway, which is why he's able to consistently keep this up. And literally, it's tit for tat at the moment. Both of them bash each other to no end. Considering the space they have in Wildlands as well, and Onyo just trying to keep these straight lines as he did earlier on for some of those canisters. Got the shockwave here going underneath the bridge. We're going to pause just a little bit so he can perfect nitro through this next section of the bridge. Good use of the 360. David's doing the same thing, but Onyo's actually done it twice, 3 times. Straight after that bridge momentum and using a perfect nitro, but decides to go for the barrel roll instead, as well as the straight jump. I could see what he was doing. He wanted to play a little bit greedy to get some additional nitro. I think that could cost him here and could cost him this first track.
I feel like the players were listening to us talk. They were saying, okay, let's give them mode finale. They want mode finale? We'll just play it on Wildlands. Don't worry about it. Not a problem at all. And David here looking like he's going to edge out Onyo on track number 1, but this was nail-biting. I'm tempted to say this is up there with Future Flash's comeback as the closest race we've seen today.
Yeah, I think it is 100%. Is David now just going to clean up what he started, finish things off, and there we go. And I think I respect what Onyo did. You know, going for that barrel roll jump into the straight, he needed to do that. And even if he did manage to pull that off and complete that, I still don't know if he was even able to successfully be able to take that victory. It would have been a very, very tough call, because at the same time, you're kind of going out of direction and you've not got that perfect line, but at least you get the additional nitro. So it would have been, I wouldn't say it was a questionable play. It had to be done, but, you know, these things happen. But David with the early lead here, I told you, every time I predict a third place playoff, it's just, it just doesn't go my way, does it?
No, basically, the next time we play roulette, I need you to bet on black so that I can go red. we'll work on strategy for that a little bit later, but David taking the first in this best of 3, really, really nicely done. Fantastic first track from him, but pushing him all the way was Onyo, and I'm hopeful for a track number 3. You know, I think this could happen.
I think it could as well. If Onyo gets an early lead at the beginning on Nirvana, then there's no reason why he can't go to Osaka straight afterwards. There's absolutely no reason for it at all, and it'll be interesting to witness to see what they can do. I'm very surprised with the shenanigans they both get up to. Like, they're both not scared to fall on top of each other or, you know, cause any disruption to their speed and agility through some of these bridges. They just overly take each other back and forth without too much care in the world, and this is what we love to see, because there was just seen a lot of aggression, and both of them really want this third place.
So $200 on the line here. Of course, the difference between 3rd and 4th place. All sorts of stuff going on. I'm looking forward to seeing which one of these drivers is going to take the top step, well, in this particular best of 3. But most importantly, I just want to see a track number 3. I would love for this to go all the way in for us to see a mode finale. I feel like that's our goal as casters here, right? Let's take a look at a couple of those moments from that last race before we go into track number 2. It was really tooth and nail for the first half. The entire first lap, it was tooth and nail, wasn't it? It was really hard to call what was going to happen. The only sad thing for David at the start of that, you could see that he felt just a tad short of going to the road a little bit earlier, and it cost him a tiny bit of speed. But it didn't matter, though. He managed to save up his shockwave. You saw here that because Onyo was trying to crash him out from that barrel roll jump, it didn't matter. David
because
had that.
Well, exactly, but it gave David a lot more airtime. It was able to get him in a lot more nitro to overtake him.
So David there managing to get one up on his opponent. So Onyo now fighting to try and claim that final podium spot. David needs to win on long run if he wants to make this a 2-0. On the first track, he completed it and managed to get himself the victory in a time of 2 minutes 17.865. He's going to be very pleased with that after that first lap tussle. He must be pumped full of adrenaline right now. That was really close, and I can't wait to see a similarly close race number 2.
Yeah, considering the amount of scuffles he had with Onyo then, that's still not a bad time. It's still pretty good. It's not time trial material, but it was still pretty damn good for what we saw there. But going into the next one, it's as I mentioned earlier, like Nevada is probably one of those tracks where you've got a lot of space, especially going onto long run as well. So normally the driver with the best base skills will normally come out on top. There's not really too much risk involved. There is a few greedy methods you could take, but even then, no, it's very hard to solidify that top spot when you've given your opponent an early lead.
If we see an early advantage, having both of these drivers come out with such strong base driving skills could mean that it ends up being a bit of a procession. But I get the feeling that whichever driver is behind will start taking some risks. I guess the issue is on long run, there are fewer risks to take, right? And so there are fewer opportunities for someone to do something like that.
That's right, yeah. And we saw Nilo do it to Ferrara. So, it's a good example of like someone with such incredible driving skills can be able to topple them no matter what circumstances they're in. But going to this at the moment, as both of them going for each other's jumps, and both of them is literally the exact same time going from the double into the perfect nitro there. It could be both shockwaving across this next section of the bridge.
No.
But in the end, it's going to be Onio who fails to make it in the end. For some reason actually clipped that side of the bridge instead of going straight through the middle. I think it was just more refining that line. But on a track like Long Run as well, this is going to be an extremely tough ask or tall order in itself for Onio to bring this back.
No, that is heartbreak for Onio. Not much he can do from this point other than absolutely give it his all and hope that David wrecks. But David will know that this victory in this third place is his for the taking now. That is genuinely heartbreaking.
It certainly is. If there was a track you did not want to do it on, it would be on... Well, to be fair, it's a lot of tracks on Nevada, but this one in particular was probably the one you did not want to do at all. And look at this. David's playing is so safe. No, no weird or quirky methods at all in terms of what he wants to do here. So it just makes perfect sense. Just keep it straight, keep it cool, keep it calm and collected. Let's just get this $400 quick and just not make sure we have any slip-ups along the way.
Exactly. So now the door is open for him to walk through. He just needs to calmly shut it behind him. No scary, unnecessary risks for David. Play it nice and safe. You've got a massive gap. And hopefully he can close it out from here. It's still not easy, though. Like, the amount of pressure and the nerves that you're feeling in David's position when it's in the bag leads to scenarios like what we saw earlier today, where it looks like you have a win in the bag and you can throw it away. So David still has to focus, still has to concentrate and make sure he nurses that car home.
He certainly does indeed. Nursing that car home. That's probably one of the best analogies to put it for someone who's got such a huge lead, because some people do just drop the lead like that, but not on a track like this, especially on Long Run here. As now David looking to try and seal the deal, making sure he can keep that 2-0 victory in check. Looking to go over the finish line very shortly here in the next 10 or 20 seconds. Just looking to, as you would say, a victory lap here with that shockwave now. As he's gone across, it's going to be perfectly fine. Onio still behind, but yeah, it was a good showing for him nonetheless. Sadly, he will place fourth. David will get that podium finish on third place. He'll be walking away with 400, Onio with 200. And yeah, David will be happy with that, considering it's the first time in a while we've seen him compete here.
Yeah, congratulations to both of them. I mean, at the end of the day, being the top four to make it this far is incredible. A little bit surprised that Onio was the driver to make it in fourth place, but yeah, to be fair, it's happened on merit. We've had two best of threes where Onio's opponents have just been absolutely on it. And that's the reason he's there. It's actually been really good racing.
It really has been, yeah. It's just unfortunate that bridge skip you saw there on the right-hand side causing the crash like that, which was a little bit of a surprise, considering, like, I'm not saying the bridge is like absolutely humongous, but I think he was trying to do something else leading up to that. He was thinking 2 steps ahead, but obviously he was a little bit behind. He was trying to think of ways in order to try and rectify that, but yeah, it just wasn't to be. But in terms of that, he knew that once he crashed in Nevada, that was it. It was pretty much game over from there.
Let's take a look at the critical moment from that last race and a couple of those replays as well to show you exactly how this came about. The start, pretty even, pretty exciting. David there clipping the inside wall a bit, but nothing too drastic. And then later on, really, is where it all went wrong for Onio after this.
Yeah, it certainly was indeed. It's just that one mishap on the bridge, which was just really such a shame, so unfortunate. It's a shame that, you know, a lot of these series can sometimes end on a crash like that just due to the fact that they're making those risk-reward factors to close the gap. It has to be done. Sometimes you may crash, sometimes you'll be able to reward yourself a few tenths of a second, and as that multiplies, then you'll be able to, you know, overtake your opponent. But has to be done due to the fact that because it's only 2 laps, you've only technically got like a couple of minutes to try and at least make it feasibly possible. You know, these things happen.
Well, unfortunate for Onio, but at the end of the day, a win on merit. So really, really well played. It means that that's our 3rd place decider now done. And we only have the best of 5 grand final to look forward to. And that's David with a 2:35.431. I mean, he goes through in 3rd place. He will claim his spot on the podium. And I have to say, it's well deserved.
Yeah, certainly is indeed. Congratulations to him. I know he didn't make it to the final, but he did a great showing against Jagermeister. It wasn't to be, but hopefully this will be a great learning experience as well to, you know, be a lot more confident going into future tournaments and future seasons especially. And yeah, I want to see a bit more from David. It's nice to see him back again. I'm sure I've seen this name before crop up in the past, and it'll be nice to see him be able to do it again. But of course, it's all about the qualifiers again.
It is indeed. So that was, that's our 3rd place decider. And that's our Android Grand Final left to go. Congratulations to David once more for picking up the $400 and the 3rd place in today's tournament. These open finals are very important to these drivers. And we've seen a lot of really, really strong names not even make it to this point. So just being as part of the Final 4 is so impressive and really important for these guys. So commiserations to Onio, but well played to David. And now we get to look forward to the grand finals. For those of you who are joining us more recently, we'll show you who's going to be driving in the grand finals and the brackets in just a moment. But so far, just a brief recap of what we've seen on Android today. Been some very close races. It's been really quite enjoyable.
Yeah, it certainly has been. We've seen CEST actually take down Onio. Normally we've seen Onio versus Jagermeister final. So it's nice to see CEST, or a new contender, basically make it to the final to try and give Jagermeister a bit of a challenge here. If people don't know at home, Jagermeister's basically won the last 2 seasons. He's looking to make it a 3rd in a row. And for what we saw earlier on, he's looking to try and definitely do that by all means necessary with an incredible performance against David. And it'd be interesting to see what CEST could do here and to see if he can get him off his pedestal.
So let's take a look at the paths the players took to get into this position and what we have seen so far today. In the bracket, we have CEST winning his particular heat, doing a very, very good job, I have to say. Like, what an amazing 2-0. He did such a phenomenal job. And then Jagermeister as well, similar dispatch times, I have to say, against David. But it got very interesting in the 3rd place. I thought Onio David was really quite close. I feel like the 2-0 scoreline there doesn't really represent what we saw.
Yeah, I think, you're absolutely right there in terms of the reflection from the previous series. And for CEST, we didn't really see him get challenged that much either. So I want to see what happens when he is pressured to a very, high level, so like very heavily, to see exactly how this will go. Because Jagermeister is definitely going to put more than just pressure on. He wants to literally annihilate him in this final. And CEST is going to try and put a stop to that if he can. I'm worried about a couple of nitro mistakes here and there, which he used in that first track in the first series. But apart from that, his base drive has been pretty good. So I want to see how CEST will do with that pressure of Jagermeister and what he can really bring to the table.
So moving on to the grand finals, it's going to be a best of 5, and we're going to be playing these on different tracks as well. So we're going to be starting off on Pearl of the Orient in Shanghai. And once that's done, we're then going to be moving on to Nile River and then Whirlwind Curve. So the 2 tracks to the left there of your screen. And then if we require a 4th and 5th track, respectively, we'll be going on to Paradise Resort and the City That Never Sleeps. So for this grand final, are we seeing a little bit of a different challenge here? What do you think, Lethal?
It's just nice that we've got a nice mixture for this grand final, isn't it? I think the Pearl of Orient, Paradise Resort and the City That Never Sleeps are the tracks where you can, take a lot of risk factors in order to be able to close out the gap in your opponent, especially with some of the speed tricks you can do. With Whirlwind Curve and Nile River, with tracks 2 and 3, I do feel like it's because there's a lot more space. Normally the most refined driver will normally win it outright. And, it could be back and forth here. We'll have to see. And this is what I mean. It depends on what kind of player they are. And for Jagermeister, I know that he's going to try and win this outright 3-0 or 3-1. It's quite worrying how well he did against David, considering David did extremely well against Onio. It's like kind of that rock, paper, scissors kind of method we saw there between those three. But for SeCST, though, this is a nice breath of fresh air, really. A new contender, a new opponent to really put the nail down to see if he can stamp his authority and make a real name for himself, even though we have heard of him briefly in previous Asphalt tournaments. But the opponent of Orient is going to be a nice, clear indicator of what could be to come in this best of 5.
I feel like we have to give the props to SeCST as well in that the manner he defeated Onio was impressive. It felt like Onio couldn't do anything against SeCST. It wasn't neck and neck in the same way the third place playoff was. SeCST was just imperious in that best of 3. And I think if we see that SeCST against Jagermeister, he's really going to give Jagermeister a genuine run for his money.
Yeah, I think Jagermeister is definitely going to be, I wouldn't say worried because he's quite a confident player, but he's definitely kept tabs on that first semi-final. He's probably seen the same mistakes we witnessed in terms of what SeCST does when he's in the lead. Like, he doesn't really... It's like I said before, those nitro mistakes he made on that slope on the first track, it might not be mistakes. It might just be him playing so safe that he wants to not go up to a high speed and then potentially crash around one of the bends. He's just playing it super safe. But this is why I was talking about the pressure from Jagermeister, who's going to give to SeCST, and to see exactly how he can handle it if he's in the lead at any time.
Well, I think it's, shall we say, relatively clear what this is going to be, but I'm going to chance it and ask you anyway. Let's have a prediction for the grand finals from you, shall we?
Yeah, go on in. I'm going to say a good 60-40 from Jagermeister. I think he's going to make it 3 times on the trot. I feel like this is his time to do it again. Obviously, I know like Onio was one of his top contenders, but it doesn't seem to be like that today. I'm not too sure if it's because Onio didn't perform to best visibility today, just wasn't his day, or just maybe hasn't been able to train enough or something like that. But SeCST, though, I'm still impressed with what I saw. Just something about that first track in the first semi-final is just dwindling on my mind, and I want this first track to remove that from my mind and give us that indicator we need of how much of a close affair this is going to be. But Jagermeister, I think, is going to win this.
I'm going to press you a little bit here because you said 60-40. 60-40 isn't 3-0 or 3-1. 60-40 is 3-2.
It does, yeah. It definitely is,
So are we feeling like this could be another 5-track grand final?
I don't think it's going to be a clean sweep, but I think it will go to at least a track 4.
Okay. I am personally hoping to see a track 5. So I'm not saying we're necessarily going to see a crazy reverse sweep like we did previously, but I would like to see this go absolutely all the way. I would love SeCST to show up and say, this is what I need to do to dominate, and remove those mistakes, or be like, okay, let's play seriously now and really go for it. I cannot wait. This is track number 1, Pearl of the Orient.
All right, let's see how much pressure SeCST can give to Jagermeister here, as he's now got a slight lead over Jagermeister at the moment, and both of them playing very straight and narrow around this next corner. And Jagermeister, both of them actually used that shockwave before that next jump. Perfectly understandable, pretty standard at this point. Not really too much to tell. Using that double nitro from that last jump, used a double nitro again going over around this next bend. Both of them using that drift, but it looks like SeCST used that perfect nitro a little bit earlier just to give a little bit more spacing between the two here. He decided to use the 360, where Jagermeister uses 360 a little bit later, but that does mean that SeCST will have a little bit more nitro to use around this next bend.
And so far, it's feeling pretty neck and neck. It's like they're carbon copies of each other. SeCST very much keeping on the tail end. Jagermeister, sorry, on the tail end of SeCST. Not too much to write home about in terms of differences between their play at the moment. Using their nitro at almost exactly the same time. A little bit of a brush on the inside there from Jagermeister. Puts him a little bit offline. Gives SeCST just the tiniest bit of breathing room.
Yeah, just a little bit of a bash here and there, but it was able to wall ride as well to get a bit more nitro to try and recover from it. But you can see the lines from Jagermeister are pretty damn good, but it just seems to take the biscuit a little bit here, as SeCST just not giving him really any motive. And look at that, he's actually extending the lead here. Every 15 seconds, you see a couple of tenths just passing by, and Jagermeister's realizing this, and he's thinking, what more can I do to try and close this gap? His lines are good, they're very refined. SeCST is still risking the 360s across each and every part of the bridge, even on the smallest of jumps as well, to keep that nitro in check and conserved. And now he's going to be going around this next bend as well to use the shockwave over to the barrel roll. Good airtime as well, good line, good refinement as well. As he goes around this next bend, use it to shockwave once again, and now going to go for one of the final barrel rolls here, as he's now using the double nitro to give himself a little bit of turning capacity going up this next straight jump. Not going to use any 360 or any of that shenanigans to play it very safe. And I'm not going to lie to you, that was really, really good. And that was about 0.8 of a second here, John.
So it's exactly like you said earlier. It was going to come down to what does CEST look like when he's in the lead? Are we going to be eliminating those small mistakes? Because Jagermeister will capitalize on every single one of them. And I think, provisionally at least, we've got our answer. I feel like he switched it on. He's gone, yeah, okay, I'll stop sandbagging now. I'll stop doing things differently. Let's take a look at what went down there in race number 1. But CEST has just given a huge wake-up call to Jagermeister and said, I am here to play.
He's just not bothered. Not bothered in the slightest. He's in the lead and just treating it like a time trial. That's really, really scary. What makes it even scarier for Jagermeister was the fact that his nitro tricks were fine. Like, his jumps were good. There was 1 or 2 times good. He could have 360'd a lot earlier off some of the small jumps. But apart from that, that's not enough time to close that gap. And CEST was just flaring on the server. He looked so strong. His lines were incredible. He had everything he needed and more to take the victory in that first track. And what makes it worse for Jagermeister is the fact that we've got these next 2 tracks, which are going to be more about your refinement as a base driver and more about the space of how you're going to perform and less about those nitro tricks and some of the bits and pieces you can do on top of that, going into Nile River and then into Whirlwind Curve straight afterwards. So this is a really scary opponent to face up against.
2 minutes 08.832 for CEST there as he notches up 1 point. Don't forget, this is a best of 5 grand final, so even if it is 2-0, it doesn't mean you've won. And we did have a reverse sweep in iOS, so anything is possible. But right now, Jagermeister, I mean, I don't know if it's possible to rattle Jagermeister, but if it is, consider him currently rattled. CEST dispatched him in race number 1, not with ease, but it certainly made it look like CEST wasn't feeling any pressure at all.
Yeah, again, like I said, not bothered. Like, both of them played the race really clean. There was times where Jagermeister was catching up because the lines for CEST wasn't as good, and then it was the other way around. It was just a role reversal a few times. I know for also most of the people watching from that perspective, it was both of them just having a very clean race, but just very small speed tricks you saw there with the nitro and what they were doing. But you could see they were kind of overtaking each other in terms of the lines they were refining, and it was just, you could see the possibility which CEST was given to Jagermeister to win, and that was none. Like, it was just unbelievable the way he was playing, and he would surprise me if he was to try and do it the next 2 tracks. We'll have to see if Jagermeister could try and get that early lead and just try and authorize himself with the position game at the beginning.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the words early lead. If Jagermeister's in a position where he doesn't feel like there's anything he can do to wrong foot his opponent, or if he's behind, he stays behind, then all eyes are going to be on what he can do at the start of the race. And we're not necessarily saying anything dirty, although we never, of course, put that option off the table. But when you're jockeying for position, if there's anything you can do to even put your opponent off, now's the time to start thinking about it.
Yeah, if you've got a 1 or 2-0 lead, you can. But problem though, Alex did that with a 2-0 lead, and then he ended up losing 3-2. So some roundabouts here and there, isn't there, in terms of it can become a little bit of a shambles. But yeah, I think you're right though. As long as you do it so that it's not a high probability of messing yourself up, that's fine. Sure. Like, if you do it in a way Alex did, where you only lost a little bit of speed, that's fine. You know, that's not an issue. But I probably wouldn't think about that until it's at least 2-0. I suppose if the opportunity is there when it's 1-0, yeah, why not go for it? If you guarantee yourself a second track victory, yeah, take it.
Wouldn't think about it until it's 2-0. I mean, I feel like the thoughts crossing their minds, but I also think you're right. They're probably coming to the same conclusion you are. But honestly, if you're Jagermeister right now, you must be thinking to yourself, how is it possible that I'm getting soundly beaten by essentially doing the basics better? Like, Jagermeister, it's very rare for a racer of his caliber to be put in this position.
Yeah, I think it's pretty even, like in terms of the skill they have as drivers going into this series. I think it's more Jagermeister kind of drifted a little bit, a couple of tenths of a second after every 30 seconds, because he's trying to do some small things in terms of his speed tricks to kind of like gain a little bit more nitro. But also at the same time, you know, not taking away from Suchti at all, his lines were a lot straighter on parts of the tracks. But then again, same with Jagermeister on some other parts. So that's why I kept saying it was very hit and miss. It was very back and forth. It was always ranging between half a second to a full second. And you saw from there at the end, Suchti was able to even extend the leads after, you know, just over a couple of minutes of just pure racing. Unbelievable.
The fact that he's able to just increase the lead as well is just mind-boggling. You would think that with Jagermeister so close behind you, there is a way for you to crack. The mistakes would start to appear. The lines would start to be a little bit suboptimal, but no. Let's find out now if Suchti can do it 2 games in a row. Jagermeister almost getting the lead off the start, using a bit of nitro though, and Suchti maintains the lead.
I like that from Suchti. Knew the car was there and available for him to push Jagermeister onto, and it could be the same story once again. But let's see the refinement from both these players. Both of them using the shockwave going up that previous jump. Both of them doing it again just to keep that speed and momentum going. Saving the shockwave. As you can see, Suchti drifted just a tiny bit and gave up a couple of tenths of a second in order to do that. But Jagermeister did a couple of 360 under the bridge to keep that nitro intact. Using the 360 again, but he missed the barrel roll. If he carried on as normal, as originally planned, he should have, probably would have actually overtaken him.
Yes, missing the barrel roll was absolutely huge there, unfortunately. And Jagermeister now playing a little bit more of catch-up. He was maybe on the bumper and now is something like just under half a second behind. So it's not fatal by any stretch, but he's got work to do.
He certainly does. It's not out of the realms of possibility yet, but Jagermeister now needs to start thinking a bit more clearly now and think about what other risks he can take. Sadly, because of the 360 he did on the previous jump, he missed out on the barrel roll straight afterwards, and the barrel roll would have been huge for him in order to continue with that nitro gain there. But Suchti just continue where we left off from that first track, just using a single nitro to get around this bend, and then we'll be shockwaving straight afterwards to do the barrel roll into the next jump. Also good grind on the rail there from Jagermeister to continue with that nitro and to increase that further, using the perfect nitro once again. And you can see that Jagermeister seems to have the edge on that section of the track, always seems to be able to close the gap by a few tenths of a second here. But will he be able to continue that, as he's not going to be playing games now, going for the 360. Going to go for this 360 in this jump? No, he does not. Decides to just go for the shockwave here, go for the double nitro onto the next jump here. But Suchti just seems to be way too consistent of a driver here as he shockwaves before one of the last jumps. Realises that it's too little too late. There's nothing more he can do. Jagermeister knows he can't catch up and just basically crashed, just fell ahead of it there. So it looks like Suchti is going to be finishing this second lap off. Just going to try and get the shockwave here around one of these final bends. And that's going to be all said and done here. So it's going to be a 2-0 now for Suchti, John.
That was, I mean, it's almost psychological, right? The moment at which you see the wreck like that, and Suchti's thinking, am I in Jagermeister's head? This is not a position that Jagermeister is used to being in. This is not something that happens to him very often at all. So you can understand when he puts himself in a position of just that little bit extra pressure where he's going, how is this happening? I clearly need to up my game. And you start to see those errors creep in. This is phenomenal stuff from Suchti.
It really was. And it wasn't like Suchti was playing perfect either. The part before the bridge on that first step, he drifted a little bit more than he had to in order to get that perfect nitro. And you saw that Jagermeister instantly tried to capitalize on that, went for the 360 under the bridge, managed to get a lot more nitro, but the problem was he was trying too hard to overtake about 10 or 15 seconds later when he 360 over one of the jumps, and then it meant that he couldn't go for the next barrel roll, which could have got him a huge amount of nitro to continue to pursue and put more pressure on. And of course, by then you saw that Suchti realized he's at least a second in front. There's no more pressure anymore. It will have to take a fatal crash in order for me to, lose out on this track win. But it does mean that Suchti is currently up 2-0. Is it going to be the same thing with Future Flash, where who's able to create reverse sweep? I don't know, because I do feel like Suchti is. This is probably the best. This is probably one of the best drivers I've seen so far today, like this season. Like, it's been incredible the way he's just been playing overall.
Don't even knock the possibility of a reverse
Oh,
sweep.
wow.
Let's take a look now at track 2 and exactly what went down there. But CEST is really impressing us with this drive. We were wanting to see whether Jagermeister was going to get ahead initially. It didn't look like he was able to. Got squeezed a little bit onto the side of the track, used a bit of nitro, but it wasn't enough to get back in front. And then later on in the race, unfortunately, Jagermeister crashing, and as a result, CEST is now on championship point.
Yeah, it's a shame, really. Jagermeister knew about that point. It was only 2 more bends, nothing really risky enough in order to cause a crash. It's basically his way of just saying GG and game, so to speak. But yeah, unfortunate, but it's going to be interesting to see how Jagermeister's going to come back from this. Obviously, you can see there's a little bit of frustration, but it's not frustration from any self-infliction with the mistakes he's made. It's more the fact that he's struggling to topple CEST at the start of each of these races.
Sure. And that's a 2:25.131 for CEST. It feels, I mean, it is now quite literally do or die for Jagermeister. Again, a phrase I didn't think I would be uttering at the beginning of this broadcast. This is incredible stuff. Jagermeister, used to his opponents being in the position he is in now, and he, I think, has no choice but to do everything he can to get ahead at the very, very start of the next race.
And you saw CEST at the start, you know, bash him into the vehicle. You can get a tiny bit of nitro, but it's the speed you've lost already straight afterwards. And CEST doesn't care. Like we said it before, where, you know, it depends. If you've got 1 or 2-0 lead, you can take these risks. Like, you know, if you want to have a little bit of a dig, that's fine. And Jagermeister was coming back due to the extra drifting, which CEST was doing before he was heading in under the bridge. Sure. And if Jagermeister wasn't trying to be too greedy with the actual nitro intake he had for some of his jumps, he may have overtaken him, but you've seen how good CEST is. So I think Jagermeister feels like he needs more constantly to be able to even be able to overtake this powerhouse pretty much.
And I think that's what we're witnessing. Jagermeister looking, sort of searching deep in the tank for something. He might have something there, but he hasn't been able to find it just yet. And he's beginning to run out of time. CEST with a 2-0 lead. Is this just going to be a straight up 3-0, Lethal?
Well, we said that last time, didn't we? So it could be, don't get me wrong, but Jagermeister is going to have to figure out a way to try and tilt CEST in some way. I think just winning one track will help him, you know, decrease the amount of momentum and morale boost, which CEST is feeling at the moment, because CEST is now feeling in the back of his mind, just one more track and it's done, it's sorted. But Jagermeister now, a nice little early lead here, nice little grind on the rail onto the jump, and CEST is directly behind him, doesn't get much airtime, mind you, but does manage to overtake him and just make it through this next jump.
Wow, so CEST taking the shorter line and already ahead despite not getting as much airtime. Jagermeister is going to be furious about that, and he is suddenly playing catch up again despite being ahead off the start line. Jagermeister got what he wanted off of that start.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if Jagermeister was thinking about doing the barrel roll off that straight jump, but I think they decided to do the 360 instead. Just using that single boost to get a little bit more turning capacity into the perfect, into the double. And CEST now just playing it really safe and secure, using the shockwave up this next barrel roll. Great stuff from him, good landing as well. He's going to try and roll over this next bend to use the shockwave once again. And this is looking, again, very strong. CEST is really hard to fault this guy. It really is. And because of that jump from Jagermeister, as you rightly mentioned, it's going to cost him dearly here.
And you don't need that when you're already behind. The 360s coming in from Jagermeister trying to get back.
No!
And unfortunately focusing too much on generating the nitro and not enough on where you're going. And I can't believe I am seeing this. CEST now, his lead is incredible. Wait, hang on a second. Jagermeister's reeled him back a bit?
Yeah, CEST said he left the trap. I'm not too sure what happened there, but CEST's still got an incredible lead now. But he just needs to play this safe. No, you know, don't do too many 360 over his straight jumps now. He needs to just play it safe. Look, he's even missing the barrel roll jump just to be extra short, and actually deciding to prioritise the wall ride just to confirm it here, because he knows that this is the last track. This is the final one to end this grand final and take it with a clean sweep 3-0 here, as he's going to be using that shockwave to go across this next barrel roll. Jagermeister still directly behind him, still trying to do everything he can to try and catch up, even with the amount of nitro he has in his back pocket. I'm not sure it's going to be happening. It's 69 shockwaves over the top. Still got plenty of nitro to get in this next bend, using the single to give himself a bit more momentum as it goes across. Shockwaves over and over the finish line. Search is going to clean it or take it in clean fashion here. 3-0 over Jagermeister. What a grand final, and in convincing fashion. And we don't see anything like this normally, but that was super impressive there from CEST. But commiserations for Jagermeister as well.
Exactly. Jagermeister in second, CEST taking home the spoils. Not without incident, mind you. It's almost refreshing to see that the nerves did get to CEST a little bit, leaving the track on lap number 2, but it was after Jagermeister had already wrecked, so he wasn't able, unfortunately, to take advantage of it. Let's take a look at some of those moments from track number 3 there. Obviously the one that sealed CEST's championship win, but this was quite eventful, actually.
It really was, and it makes you wonder what would have happened if Jagermeister didn't crash at the beginning of that second lap. It could be looking at a 4th track, and he's probably also thinking, oh, typical, like, you know, he left the track as that was happening. It was just absolutely, you know, the law pretty much, isn't it? But Jagermeister is still putting an incredible performance. I still think, you know, these two drivers put on a fantastic grand final, even though the scores don't reflect what we saw. But this is what happened. CEST didn't make any mistakes. Barely any errors. He left the track earlier on the final lap, but it didn't really matter by then. It was so far ahead. It just showed how much of a clean, proficient, and efficient driver he was overall. That's the value of a lead in racing, right? It enables you to build up a bank of mistakes that you're allowed to make and not concede your position. And CEST, if you're going to make a mistake, do it while you're in the lead by an awful long way. Like, that is literally the perfect time to make a mistake and leave the track. So kudos to him. Beautiful stuff on merit. Really, really good stuff. It really was. And it was a very well-deserved 3-0 as well. I don't think he lost a race at all in the slightest. And this is what we were excited about. We were just like, he'll be a contender against Jagermeister, but is he going to be able to take him down? I think a lot of us could agree that we weren't really sure, but from what we saw there, it's, you know, it's a man of steel, basically. It doesn't really feel too much in terms of pressure mentality, just cracks on as though it's just a standard race or standard time trial, and it's very impressive. And the reason why I say it's very impressive, because it wasn't like Jagermeister was behind by more than a second every time. He was, you know, piling the pressure onto him, but he wasn't really too fazed by it. No, absolutely not. It's we make a big deal of how time trials and the 1v1 format are very different formats for a reason. It's because, generally speaking, you can't afford to treat them differently, except CEST is such a time trial robot that he doesn't treat them differently, and he's just able to soak it up and dish it straight back out like it was a time trial. That was really impressive to watch. Well, it's like I said about Future Flash. They were both #1 seed for a reason, weren't they? And it's basically, you know, hit the nail on the head there. But, you know, congratulations to both players. It's been really impressive, like the drive and the fundamentals and mechanics they would bring to the table here. So let's take a look at the bracket, give you guys one last refresh of what went down today. This is on the Android side of the bracket. We started out the day with CEST versus Onio, which was a regulation 2-0, even though we've seen Onio in the finals before. So that was already a hint of what was to come. And then Jagermeister managed to get the win over David in a closely fought series. But afterwards, David managed to get one back onto Onio to win the 3rd place match before we saw a 3-0 from CEST against Jagermeister in the final. Not what we would have predicted at the start of the day, and definitely announcing his presence in this championship in a big, big way. Congratulations to CEST. Yeah, commiserations to everyone else, but they don't leave empty-handed, do they? Of course, no, 1200, 7-4, and 200 respectively. All a clean sweep, and for CEST to take out both of last season's finalists without dropping a track is just a monumental feat in itself. And just as a reminder, at the end of the day, for people who have taken who have only been watching the Android bracket, this is what happened earlier in iOS. Future Flash taking out Nilo 2-0, although a very entertaining second track, and arguably that should have been 2-1 to one of these players. And then we had Fra taken out by Alex
2-1, really entertaining series, with Nilo redeeming himself in the third place match over Fra, and then Future Flash completing an epic reverse sweep against Alex in a delightful 3-2 grand final. So lots of action, iOS and Android today, all over the shop.
I will cast a tournament one day where Alex wins. I don't know when. It'll happen at some point, at some stage. But yeah, the reverse sweep from Future Flash being down 2-0 was just incredible, especially what he had to deal with in tracks 3 and 4. Alex continues to be in the bridesmaid at the moment. We're not too sure when that win is going to come. It will do. 100%.
So close today. So
just
close.
when. Yeah, maybe in 5 years' time. I don't know. But it'll happen. He's way too good and way too consistent of a player to not have a championship underneath his belt.
Yeah, I think so. It'll absolutely happen. We're looking forward to seeing it as well. But congratulations to all of our players today for just getting to the point where you're participating in these grand finals. Really good job. $1,200, of course, for each of the winners, iOS and Android. And a huge thank you to Snapdragon Elite Gaming, without whom we literally couldn't put this tournament on, the Snapdragon Pro Series. It's been an entertaining day of games. iOS and Android, all of the competitors have given us some fantastic driving. And we've had different storylines, different ways people have been winning. But ultimately, it's been exciting no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah, it has been. It's been an incredible day. Both platforms were absolutely stacked. iOS, it was just madness how we've got a reverse week grand final. And on the Android side, it's just impressive how a player such as CEST took down both of last season's finalists without dropping a track. Like, it's just, yeah, unheard of. But yeah, it was just a great day without a shadow of a doubt.
And of course, all of our players playing on some of the latest hardware powered by Snapdragon in a lot of cases. Mobile gaming, very different to desktop gaming, where it's easy to say more frames is better, and it is, but it's way harder to package that sort of thing into the tiny sizes that mobile phones are compared to our desktop computers. So it really is a feat, incredible feat of engineering to get processors in place that allow us to do stuff like that, which is why we have companies like Snapdragon here who are able to put these tournaments on to showcase the sheer power of what those processing units can accomplish. So a huge thank you for that. And we look forward, of course, to many more tournaments to come. It's been an absolutely delightful day. I can't wait for the next edition of this already, Lethal. Sum up the massive sort of sea of emotion and different storylines that we've talked through today.
I'll probably have to repeat a little bit what I said, actually. I think it's just, the day has just been incredible. Even looking at the names before we came into the tournament today, I knew we were going to, be dealing with a lot of excitement, pressure, crashes, storylines, you name it. The history behind all of his players, it was just nothing short of spectacular. Future Flash coming out top on iOS side from reverse sweep in the grand final was madness. CEST, not dropping a single track against the previous two finalists. Like, it's the storylines which have been created, it's been mad. And then going into next season, it's going to be even more exciting to see exactly how things will pan out and who's going to qualify, of course.
So, of course, that leaves us to say a massive thank you to all of you for watching, in addition to all of the drivers who allow us to put on the show alongside our sponsors such as Snapdragon and Monster. You've been watching the Snapdragon Pro Series, an absolutely fantastic day. We've had reverse sweeps in the grand finals, the people we expect to win winning, the people we expect to win losing, some new challenges arriving, some old faces really showing us what they're made of, a little bit of everything today. Thank you all so much for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Stay safe wherever you are, and good night.
Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming and Monster Energy.
Won't stop going till a player on top know it. Rooftop, penthouse suite. If you really want it, gotta own it. Fly through it, we was at the lowest. Blood, sweat, tears, the components. Riding all year, now's the moment. We are not friends, we are opponents. Yeah, I'm coming for mine. Yeah, I'm making a play, the game on the line. Yeah, I've been on the grind. Yeah, I jump in the spot, I made it my time. Yeah, look in the sky. Yeah, the stars align, no shade to shine. Can't stop it already. Emotional work and devotion, we put in this time. Look, you won't stop.
Look at my shine with the glow. This is my time with it though. This is my time to be way at the top. Me and my guys gon' pay out the block. I don't look like boss. Time's right, and I know the sea is walking in the limelight. Promise you gon' wanna watch like a sci-fi. My guys are high risers, high tide. My crown if you come to my side. I pledge allegiance for lifetime. My squad connected like Wi-Fi. We grind and you see the highlights. This my life. It ain't a game now. Me and you, we ain't the same now. Lions coming out to play now. Opposition out the way now. Out of the way. You wasn't invited. Say you come to play. I dare you to try it. You don't wanna try me. Then step up to my team. Yeah, out of the way. Yeah, yeah. Out of the way. Yeah, yeah. Out of the way. Game now, me and you, we ain't the same now. Lions coming out to play now. Opposition out the way now. Out of the way, you wasn't invited. Say you come to play, I dare you to try it. You don't wanna try me, then step up to my team. Yeah, out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way.